secret that Anne had kept for years was told. That secret caused Anne to lose her license to practice nursing. Meet Anne Capute and her daughter Meredith. Nice to have you here today.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Let's go back, Anne, to the trial time. Now, you and there were two other nurses who were registered nurses, not LPNs, correct?
Right.
And they had administered morphine to a terminally ill cancer patient.
Exactly.
Under doctor's orders?
Absolutely.
All right, tell me about that.
That was an order that was given by Mrs. Linus, who was the patient. Hillier. He left an order for her, a comfort order for morphine and Valium, and those orders were carried out by myself and the other two nurses.
Mm-hmm. Now, I understand nothing was written down by the doctor.
No, it was written down by the RN in charge, who took a verbal order from him. And later, Dr. Hillier denied he gave that order.
Is it unusual for that not to be written down?
No, absolutely not. And
things are not supposed to be charted. There's usually charts at the feet of the beds, the hospital beds. That's not.
That's
the
true.
Case?
This is not unusual, and it was never unusual, and that was brought out at the trial. There were so many doctor's orders given on every patient in that hospital that was not signed until much later on, whatever. So telephone orders, all that sort of thing.
All right. So then the morphine was given now by you and the other two nurses, and was there any way, since you're indicating that the records hadn't been kept, was there any way to know how much somebody before you, let's say on a shift before yours, would have given that patient?
Oh, certainly. Those records were kept by all of us as soon as we administered the drug. And it was always there, and it was something, being a narcotic, that morphine is, you had to go to the cabinet and register how much you're taking out of that at the precise moment you were drawing it up.
And I also understand that there was a code or something called no limit for this particular patient, meaning?
Meaning you could give as much as possible to keep that patient comfortable.
All right. Now, there were three nurses when all this came out. There were three nurses who were involved here, you and the two others. Why were you brought up on trial first?
I would suspect, because I was sort of the low man on the totem pole, that and along with the fact that I gave the most morphine during the course of this particular stay.
Mercy killing is a volatile issue, would you agree?
Definitely.
And I think that a lot of people don't know the answers to this, but then when this thing was clarified in the trial, when this came out, the other two were dropped. They were not brought up, is that correct?
That's right.
Are they practicing now?
Yes, they are.
How did this trial, when it was going on, because it lasted for what, almost 2 months?
7 weeks, I believe.
All right. How did this affect your life?
Turned my life completely upside down. Of course, financially, the burdens were just overwhelming. We'll probably never recover from that.
About how much in debt are you from this?
I would say probably around 100,000.
And your husband is working?
Yes.
Okay.
Emotionally, it did a number on the children. Meredith at that time was going on 13. It did a very bad number on everyone, including myself.
Meredith, what kinds of things were happening in your home?
Well, I was just turning 13 at the time, and there were a lot of bad phone calls. And at that age, I really didn't expect it because I was, you know, running towards the phone for my friends. You know, I was just going into high school as a freshman.
Bad phone calls from?
From, well, I can't say who because I honestly don't know. But I think the biggest problem was that I didn't expect it. And it kept happening and kept happening for the period when the trial was just beginning, you know, the trial proceedings. And I think it was tough because I can say now, well, I'm 17 now, and at the time it was really tough at that age to handle something like that. And I still have trouble handling it sometimes now, but it did slack off at the time.
Yeah. When you were then found not guilty, Anne, did you have a plan as to what you would do now? Did you figure, well, I'll just return to nursing and everything will be fine?
Absolutely.
And what happened?
Rather naive thought. What happened, it wasn't as easy to accomplish as I thought it might be. All sorts of problems arose. First of all, no one wanted to touch me, so to speak, because of the notoriety of the trial. And then at that time, there was my secret, as you termed it, that surfaced, and I had to deal with that.
Okay, and we're going to find out what that secret was in a moment, and that secret resulted in your losing your license. To this day, you have not regained that, correct?
That's correct.
All right, we'll find out what that was in a moment. Stay with us.
In just a few seconds, you're going to hear about the biggest offer Time magazine has ever made, including a fantastic free gift. So stay right where you are, and I'll be back to tell you how to get it all.
You like to keep up with what's going on in the world, don't you?
You bet.
Well, if you call this toll-free number, you get Time magazine for almost half off the cover price.
Oh, sounds good to me. I'll take it.
I'm not through. You actually get that discount for half a year. 27 issues. So you know what's going on in the world. In the nation, with politics, interesting people, the latest movies, your health, and technology. And you get it with all the color and insight only Time can deliver, so you really understand what's going on.
That's for me. I'll take it.
Not yet. You get free home delivery.
Great. I'll call.
Not so fast. Wait to see this.
What?
The Time 35mm camera. It's free with your paid subscription.
You gotta be kidding.
No, we're not. It has a 50mm fixed focus lens and a range of exposure settings, so you'll take great pictures.
I'll take it.
Wait. It comes with a protective lens cap and a neck strap.
Terrific.
And that's not all. You even get a handsome carrying case and a full-color guide to better picture taking. And all you have to do is call 1-800-621-6000.
Now?
Now, that's 27 issues of Time for almost half off, a free 35mm camera, lens cap, strap, carrying case, and photo guide, all for 3 easy payments of just $8.89.
Hello? I'll take it.
Hi, I'm Judy, one of the operators here at Time magazine, standing by to take your order. Call now and get this amazing offer. Time for almost half off the cover price and the Time 35mm camera free. But hurry, an offer this good won't be around forever.
I'm Susan Sikora. We're talking today about the case of Anne Capute, who has lost her license to practice nursing and is to this day trying to get it back. Let's meet some other folks who are here. First of all, Neil Chayette. Neil is a medical ethics attorney, and he is from Boston. And Pat Piscitelli is Anne's attorney. Now, I just want to pick up the story where we left off, Anne, because there was this secret that came out, and it came out not during the testimony of the trial, but the jury had then gone into deliberation, correct?
Exactly.
Tell us the secret.
All right. I had not graduated high school. I used a friend's transcript to, and said it was my own, along with her name, and submitted that to the nursing school that I applied for and was accepted.
Okay, now, you said that you did this, you went back to nursing school, actually. You went later on in life. You went at 40 years old, right?
Yes.
Okay, and you had finished how much high school?
I had finished my first year of high school.
All right. When you did this, when it occurred to you that you didn't have this high school diploma, which was necessary to get into nursing school, and you figured the way to do it was to take somebody else's records, did it at that time occur to you that this was the wrong thing to do?
Oh, absolutely not. It sounds very naive at the time, but I really thought that I would have to spend at least 3 years going back and finishing high school. I didn't know at that time I could have gone for a GED and probably have been accepted on that.
Were you concerned, though, that perhaps there might be some information, based on the fact that most nursing schools want you to have a high school diploma, were you not concerned that some of the information that you did not get in high school might be critical to your becoming a responsible nurse?
Definitely not. I never thought I needed to know history to become a nurse, and some of the other things.
How about algebra or chemistry or biology?
Yes and no, but I didn't have to have that big a background in it.
Do you find it difficult to believe, though, that, I mean, if nursing schools want people to have high school diplomas, there's a reason for that, don't you think?
It's part of their standards.
But you didn't feel that you were compromising standards of nursing in any way by doing this?
Absolutely not.
Did your friend know that you borrowed her records?
No, she did not.
You didn't?
No.
Meredith, you know about this. Your mother's been upfront about lying, correct?
Yes, she's been upfront about everything since the trial began. And I think that I have to be objective when people talk to me about how I feel when she went into nursing school under false pretenses. And I have to say, honestly, that even though she did, I can't say it's right. Even though she's my mother, I can't say it's right whether she did it or anyone else did it. But I think something people don't understand is that when she graduated from nursing school, all the hard work that is involved, and I lived with her and I knew all the hard work that is involved in becoming a nurse, she passed on her own. She graduated, she was in the top third of her class when she graduated, and people don't understand or don't want to understand that when she graduated on her own. Those papers and that name didn't do it for her. She had to do it on her own. And a lot of people don't want to give her the credit for that, and I think she deserves it.
In addition, Susan, if I may add, she was given outstanding performance commendation for her work while there. Maureen Costello, the nursing administrator, who in fact testified in the trial against her for the Commonwealth, had given an outstanding report or congratulated her for being such a fine employee.
So if she's graduated the top third of her class, and did you ever cheat in nursing school at all, Anne?
Absolutely not.
Never on a test, never?
No.
Okay, so her record is blameless in that respect. She's done well, she's gotten high marks. Why not just give her the license?
Well, that's a good question, but I can't answer that because the Board of Nursing apparently has decided to deny it based upon the fact that she had lied upon her making application. My position has been very simply that, you know, she has been suffering since the trial began. She's been stigmatized. The other two nurses had their cases dropped against them once they saw that they couldn't convict Anne based on the evidence which was produced. And, I mean, no one knows the other two nurses' names. Anne has not practiced nursing, really, I mean, as a licensed practical nurse since June of 1980 when she voluntarily decided not to continue nursing because of the fact she had indictment pending.
Neil, ethics is your thing. Tell us why it is. Do you think that the crime is too big, the punishment is too big for the crime here?
Well, Susan, this is a particularly tragic situation because throughout the trial, and I followed this case and I've known Pat for a number of years and he did a really excellent job. The thing that was troublesome is that she should not, I don't believe, have been tried for what she was tried for. The reason she was really a victim of what I have called physician flight, and there are orders which are given just as she said, and suddenly when you look around, there's no one left.
But you're saying you're
so
going back to the trial.
I'm going back to the trial, but that sets the pattern here because it's the context. Then, although that was wrong, the problem I have is when you get in, as her daughter said, under false pretenses. The question I have is what kind of a message do we want to send to young people in this society? And it seems to me the message we have to send is you can't just take another person's transcript and use it and then cross over and get into nursing school that way. That is wrong. It's ethically, morally, and legally wrong, and there's no question about it.
Which she admits. She admits that she's done something wrong.
She admits it. I'm troubled by the fact that she said she didn't realize it was wrong at the time. I find that very troublesome. But then comes the question, is that the end of the matter? And then comes the question, do we want to also send another message to young people in society? And that is a message of compassion as well. And that's where it becomes very difficult because even Alger Hiss, which in the Hiss case is what we go by as the standard in this Commonwealth, he committed perjury, was found guilty. 23 years later, he was admitted back into the practice of law.
To a profession which is of the highest integrity and highest repute.
That is right. And that's really the issue. And my own feeling, again, the longer you think about it, the tougher it gets, is I think she did wrong. She should be punished. She has been punished. Now the question comes, when is punishment enough? And it seems to me that if she's been under voluntary suspension, in essence, for 4.5 years, that perhaps some additional period of time. But the way I sort of come out is when you factor everything in, I think at some point she ought to be able to come back again, but it is an extremely close question, and I am very troubled about the message
I agree with
we
what you're
send.
saying. I think it's difficult. We're going to pick this up in a moment because what I'm troubled by is that I'm afraid that the punishment is not happening just because of the crime of lying about the records, but the fact is setting the precedent. Stay with us.
Join Susan tomorrow on Morning Live when we find out 50 ways to leave your lover.
cookies come out great because of what we put in them. Our absolute #1 favorite raisins, Sun-Maid. They love them out of the box, in cakes, salads, even on peanut butter sandwiches. Fresh, sweet Sun-Maid. I wouldn't dream of using anything less, because putting any old raisins into these beauties would mean putting them into these beauties.
Fresh out of the box or fresh out of the oven. Sun-Maid, we're America's favorite raisin.
What's that noise?
I'm digging to find the clams in this chowder.
I should have stayed with Snow's.
If you're trying to find the clams in your chowder, dig into Snow's, New England's #1 selling chowder. A rich, creamy broth, plenty of Maine potatoes, and more tender clams than the #2 selling chowder. In fact, it takes 3 cans of that chowder to equal the clams in just 1 can of Snow's.
Lots of clams.
That's Snow's.
The more clam, clam chowder.
Time for your Tuesday Morning Live weather check. A cloudy day today and mild, a high 39. The rain comes in tonight, some of that rain to be heavy at times, and there may be some wet snow, but that will be well to the north of the city. Temperatures holding in the 30s. Rain ends tomorrow with some spotty drizzle around, but again mild, once again around 39. In a moment, we'll return with Susan on Morning Live and hear more on whether or not Anne Capute should be allowed to continue practice nursing.
Watch the stars shine on Entertainment Tonight as E.T. takes a look at the magnificent men of the movies.
Guess who's coming to dinner?
Who? You mean his parents?
It's Spencer Tracy, a leading man who really knew how to lead.
Well, come on, will you?
Then E.T. zooms in on the glamorous Linda Evans and finds out why the fashion world often follows her lead. It's all coming up on the next Entertainment Tonight.
Tonight at 7:30 on Channel 7.
So you made your home in New England. The roads you roam all lead to New England. You can't go wrong where you belong. Feel good about that.
We should also say that we invited somebody from the Board of Registration in Nursing in Massachusetts to participate this morning, to come on the show with us, but they declined, and the reason they said that they declined was because they felt they had nothing to defend in their position. They felt that Anne's license was not a license to begin with because she used false records and so forth. And their position, if this states it correctly, is that the Board of Registration, and these are their words, in nursing, regrets to inform you, this is a letter to you, that it has decided by unanimous vote not to license you as a practical nurse at this time. Those last 3 words bother me. Are they hedging here?
Well, I think they are, Susan. I don't think Anne is being punished for the fact that she lied on an application. I can't believe that, truly, because 4.5 years she's not been able to practice, and to say that for having lied about not graduating high school when she has all the smarts of any high school graduate and then some, plus the fact she's got her GED since very easily after a 5-hour exam. That's not the real reason. The real reason is because she was tried and all that material came out for 7 weeks in a court of law.
So you think that if the trial had never happened and they found out about the lie anyway, that this all would have been brushed under the carpet?
Oh, of course. I mean, doctors are censured and reinstated. Their lawyers were censured, disbarred, and reinstated. Algie Hiss is a prime example, convicted perjurer, and he's reinstated because, you know, it's totally contrary and a harsh and unforgiving position to say that you can never atone such as she has for 4.5 years. If everyone had gone through what she's gone through for 4.5 years and can't get back into nursing, I just find that incredible.
But Pat, does it not send a message out? I have very close girlfriends I grew up with who went to nursing school, who sweated bullets waiting to find out if they got in, who had to keep those grades up at 17 years old, okay? And what I'm saying is I think boards of nursing, correct me if I'm wrong, tend to take a more conservative approach and say this is the way it's done. And I'm getting that from friends I have who are nurses.
Well, I find that sometimes they're overly pristine, pure, and sacrosanct in their dealings with those people who come before them.
This is what we're facing. If you sweep it under the rug, it just seems to me that it's not fair to say that, speaking, you know, not for the board, but I can really understand that a real clear message of more discipline, and we're going to hold people to accountability of integrity. That's what this is about.
But you have, Neil.
But then comes the point, would it have happened but for the trial? And maybe it wouldn't have, but if you're going to take somebody else's diploma or grades or whatever, you do it at your peril. And if you happen to get into something, then that's what you could end up
Okay,
with.
we've got somebody else on the phone also we'd like to get in here. Lawrence Ross, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Lawrence, you are the president of Morton Hospital, correct?
Correct.
Could you give us briefly an assessment of Anne's performance as a nurse?
Well, not having directly assessed it because I'm not a clinician, but certainly according to the records and according to the nursing personnel here at Morton Hospital, Anne was certainly an above-average licensed practical nurse for the approximately 3 years that she was here at Morton Hospital.
All right, you stand behind her. If she were to get her license back tomorrow, would you hire her, Lawrence?
Well, I think that would be a decision that would be up to the nursing hierarchy here, and whether or not Anne would be interested in coming back here. I think that would create certainly difficulties because of all of the publicity that surrounded the case, but I think we would certainly be willing to consider it, yes.
And not only willing to consider it, but if the nursing hierarchy went along with it, would you put more than your 2 cents in as president of the hospital?
I certainly would have no objections if the nursing hierarchy wanted to hire her. I certainly would not interfere. I don't interfere with any other hiring, and I don't see why I should interfere with this one.
I see. All right, here's my problem now. We have little time left here, but I want to know how to fix this, because here's what I see. I see someone who was cleared of a crime. I see someone who's sitting here who is a talented nurse, it seems to me from my non-medical perspective, who clearly wants to be a nurse in an age where we need nurses, who would like to do this but doesn't have a license. And we need to give her a license in order that she can do what she does well, but we can't condone the lie that she did way back when to other prospective nursing students. How do we fix it, Pat?
Susan, there is one nurse who is now practicing, who was the RN who was controlling Anne's conduct that evening. She's back. She was given a 6-month suspension and told to take refresher courses. Okay,
she didn't lie about her credentials, Pat.
Yes, but how much punishment is enough?
All right, but let's get to how we fix it. What do you want to see done here? What do you want to see done for Anne?
I want to see her reinstated. I want to see her go back and take whatever refresher course are necessary and go back into nursing. You know, it's nursing. She's out to help the afflicted and the sick. It's a noble
we'll buy that.
profession.
Neil, what would you do? How would you
I think she should be punished. She's been punished. Maybe she should be punished a while more.
How much?
That's the question.
4.5 years is not enough?
Well, it's 4.5 years is a long time.
How many pounds of
and
flesh?
I say maybe we're getting to the end of it, and my feeling is after punishment, she, without reference to the trial at all, I think she ought to be able to become a nurse again after it's clear that you can't do this thing and get away with it.
Would you submit yourself, Anne, to another re-examination of your work, however tough that would be?
Certainly.
Is that what you would like to see done, or would you like to see something else done?
I'm not sure. I'm really willing because I want to go back to this profession. I love it. I'll take whatever I have to take, whatever kind of examination or refresher courses. Of course, I'd need those. I'd be willing to take.
You're going to stand on your ability as a nurse?
Definitely.
All right, we'll continue in a moment. Stay with us.
Born to lose. This is one of America's most loved stars.
It seems so hard to bear.
He has one of the world's most heart-touching voices.
How I long to always.
And now you can own Dean Martin's most heart-touching recordings of all.
My heart cries for you.
The recordings that touch you more than any others.
I'll hold you in my heart till I can hold you in my
The songs that stir beautiful memories.
In the misty moonlight, by the flickering firelight.
Every song's a favorite. But you also get another album with Dean's most famous. Tender love songs ever written.
Return to me.
Recordings of irresistible beauty.
For my heart wants you only.
You'll love every one of the famous love songs, and how you'll enjoy all the heart-touching favorites. You get both Dean Martin treasuries. They're not sold in stores. Order now.
Mail 1298 to Dean Martin, Box 9137, Braintree, 02184. You get 2 records, 2 cassettes, or 2 8-track tapes. This special Dean Martin offer will end with no advance notice, so write this address down now. Mail 1298 to Dean Martin, Box 9137, Braintree 02184. Dean Martin, Box 9137, Braintree, Massachusetts 02184.
Meredith, you wanted to make one last comment?
Yes, I did. The question about how when she was waiting, sweating bullets, which was true, waiting for her boards, and they were discussing 4.5 years waiting, that all the suffering we've gone through. She's wanted to be a nurse since she was 6 years old, which I think is good because she went after her goal and she got it. And some people don't know what they want when they're 40 and 45. And that's fine too, because people are different. But you have to take that into consideration.
Okay,
You
well,
really
I
do.
think we all do. It's been an interesting half hour for me. I don't know what to tell you at this point. I wonder how long you make somebody pay for a mistake. I do wonder that.
Maybe,
I don't condone lying.
Maybe we ought to give Anne Capute another chance, Susan. Maybe that's the way it ought to
I'd vote for that. I'd vote for that. Anne, thank you for being with us. We've got to wrap this up. Thank you all for being here. And Anne, you'll let us know how it works out.
Yes, I will.
All right. Meantime, tomorrow, are you involved in a romance that's not going anywhere, or perhaps it never got off the ground? Well, maybe you think you really need to get out of this, but the pain of actually having that confrontation is too much to bear for you or the other person. How do you say goodbye gracefully and painlessly? We're going to talk about that tomorrow. Meanwhile, I'm Susan Sikora. You have a terrific day. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
Was charged with the murder of cancer patient Morton. She died back in May of 1980. The trial that received international attention, she was acquitted with the help of Brockton defense attorney Pat Piscitelli. Last week's party held at Emilio's restaurant in Norton celebrated the publication of a book about that trial. 1,000 copies of Fatal Dosage were in print, and 5 film companies showed interest in it.
Which, brings up the rather intriguing question of who's going to play Anne in the movies and who's going to play Pat Piscitelli. Now, Anne tells me that her ideal choice is Julie Christie. Now, who you may remember from Dr. Zhivago, but Anne says that she thinks Maureen Stapleton's a little more realistic. I don't know. I do know, that if Julie Christie is listening tonight, out there, I guess, I would be willing to go to New York or London or Elgin, Illinois, and discuss it with her. Now, as for Pat, that's not really such a problem because Pat has confided to me that if somebody couldn't be found, if we couldn't find a star, of sufficient magnitude, he would be willing to give up his law practice for a couple of months and go to Hollywood and portray himself. I know.
But some serious questions were addressed at a press conference when it was brought up that Anne Capute had falsified her name.
Given that the district attorney was probing a dual identity and in fact said the night the jurors went out, I don't know if I even have the right defendant. Were you aware of this during the trial? Was that any reason for you to keep her off the stand?
Yes, I was aware that Anne had used another name when she applied to nursing school. Anne had told me that. She leveled with me. She told the complete truth with me. And the problem was putting her on the stand. The first words out of her mouth when she was sworn in was, "What is your name?" "My name is," and she'd have to tell her true name. which of course the first words out of her mouth, as is related in the book, would have been questionable words. She had to tell the truth. So I had some reservation about putting her on because she would have told it like it was. Besides, she was champing at the bit. She wanted to testify and was afraid of how strong she'd come on that stand.
What's the most recent contact any of you might have had with the Linus family? I don't know if I pronounced it.
Linus.
Linus.
I've had none whatsoever.
I've had none either. During the end of the trial, I think that there were nods and good morning and good afternoons, which was not happening at the outset of the trial. But as the trial unfolded, I think that the level of empathy for each side developed to a great extent. Anne wanted to talk to Mr. Linus and express her sympathy and her sorrow for what had happened, but she was under instructions from me not to talk to him at all because of the case ongoing.
I interviewed one of the daughters by phone about 6 months ago for a piece in the Herald, and not much came of it except that at that time the daughter I spoke to felt that she was still pretty much against Anne getting a license and would protest that. As it turned out, Anne will get a license.
This course that I'm in presently in Northeastern, I'll finish that in another week.
Your family, your daughters were dealing with a tremendous emotional stress. The book says that your marriage just came very close to breaking down. You lost friends and you contemplated suicide. How far away from you are you now from that horror?
A long way. Yeah, definitely.
The Drake offers an exciting weekend in New York at a special price. The only Swiss hotel on Park Avenue. For reservations, call 800-DRAKE-NEW YORK or 212-421-0900.
What? More, it raises your own level of aggression.
What I'd like to say is...
Ralph Cantizano was an owner and creator of Ragu. In 1970, he sold Ragu to Cheesebro Ponds. Ralph Cantizano has such a love for creating spaghetti sauces, he created another one and named it Francesco Rinaldi. Using the finest ingredients, he made Francesco Rinaldi's taste totally Italian. Mr. Cantizano, which do you think tastes even more Italian?
Francesco Rinaldi. As I got older, I got better. Ciao, Francesco Rinaldi.
Ciao, Francesco Rinaldi.
Alpo Snaps, Alpo Beef Bite Treats, Alpo Jerky Bits. 3 treats from Alpo that turn a dog into a best friend.
Made in Japan may have been a joke 25 years ago, but today this island nation has become an economic colossus. Last year, Americans bought $50 billion more in products from Japan than the Japanese bought from us. What are they doing right? What are we doing wrong? I'm Paula Lyons. I'll take you to the land of the rising sun for a fascinating look at how the Japanese work and live. Tonight on News Center 5 at 6.
Riches and Glitches, Chuck Kramer, Friday at 6. It's Good Day with Eileen Prose, Tom Cottle, and Ann Butler. Today on Good Day, we'll see the amazing results of the Clairol mother and daughter makeover. Then some of Boston's most powerful criminal lawyers talk about their clients in the court system. Plus, meet actress Jennifer Savage, who stars as Nurse Lucy Papandreou in St. Elsewhere.
Terrific. Good morning, everyone. And welcome. What a wonderful group.
We are live inside our Studio B. Where are you all from? Framingham. Too lovely. All answer at once.
What do you expect?
Framingham, Natick,
What a
everywhere.
show we have for you today. We're going to play a game with you guys, not at your
Charades.
expense, at our charades. Has anybody played charades?
Yeah, good. We've got some
Great.
experts in our audience, huh?
That's a relief.
That'll be fun. Yes, you get to do the signals, I hear?
Yeah.
Touching your nose and your...
you get to tell me what to do.
Yeah, I like that.
Got any plans this weekend? What are you gonna do?
None. Absolutely none.
Kick
Isn't that
back,
great
relax?
to have a weekend with no plans? Yeah.
Wonderful. You'll think of
Terrific.
something.
Cooking or something, I don't know.
Now, let's see. First, however, really a fun thing. At long last, we have the results of our mother-daughter makeover contest. Remember that? Mothers and daughters from New Hampshire to Rhode Island responded to our makeover promotion, all with the hopes of being one of the 2 lucky pairs of winners who would receive a complete head-to-toe makeover courtesy of Clairol. Our first lucky pair of winners came to our studios yesterday, before going to the John Delaria Salon in Boston. They are Claire McDonald, age 62, a recently retired owner of a secretarial service, and her daughter, Anne Palumbo, age 29, the mother of a 14-month-old daughter. Both are from Winchester, Massachusetts, and again, this is yesterday morning. And this is how Claire and Anne look now, today. Look at that. Ooh. Well, to say that the results are spectacular is a bit of an understatement. Joining us is our fashion and beauty consultant, Gloria Heidi. Gloria, what happened yesterday?
What happened? We had a fabulous time, and I'm going to tell you in detail the kinds of things that we did. First of all, though, I do want to say we really were so beautifully treated at the John Delario Salon and Skincare Center on Kenmore Square. Right, they're good folk, have talented hairstylists, colorists, beautiful makeup artists, so they contributed so much
and
to
first of all, too, second of all, let me say, darlings, you look marvelous.
You were the first one to come out with that line. Anyway, we had a marvelous time, and of course, I think everyone can see immediately that the name of the game is color.
Let's start with Claire.
This is Claire.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's
right. Mom, you look so young. I hardly knew you.
Yes.
First of all, let's start with Mom first. Let's start with Claire. What was the first thing? Well, the first step.
All right. Well, are we going to see the before here? Because I'd like to point out that okay.
You call for it in the magic
all right. Let's see the before picture, and you can see the.
Don't gasp.
Marvelous. I'm speechless. Anyway, Claire is typical of so many women. She really had beautiful gray hair. All her friends told her she had gray hair. But I want you to look at that picture and see that the gray hair did nothing for Claire's appearance. You know, gray hair has a funny way of draining the color from your complexion, from your eye color, and the gray doesn't stop at the hairline, it goes clear down to the neckline. So what we did was to get rid of the gray. And here we have Claire as a beautiful blonde. You know.
Now let's just chat with Claire.
All right.
For a
Yes,
minute.
and see what she
Claire,
thinks.
How do you feel?
I feel like my daughter's sister.
Isn't that marvelous? What did you think when you went in yesterday? Did you have any idea? What were the thoughts as the day progressed? What did you go through?
It was a lot of fun, and they were really wonderful people, and I really wanted a change because, you know, I wanted to. We all like to look younger, especially at my age, and it was so much fun.
Did you start to get to be a little bit more of an expert as the day went on? Were you starting to give them suggestions about color, or did you just let them have their way with you?
No, I let them do exactly what they wanted.
Because
I didn't really have any idea what I said. I'd love if you want to do it bright green for St. Patrick's Day.
That was never an option, Claire. I do want to point out that with all of the makeovers that we've done, even though the changes are so visually dramatic, this is something that each one of the ladies can maintain at home. For example, Claire can shampoo in nice and easy to maintain this blonde effect, so it's something that is easy for her to live with.
Oh, is this microphone not working? That's fine. We'll just make a switch here. See, did you see? You didn't even see that, did you? It was quick. Thank you so much. All right, now let's chat with Anne a little bit. How do you feel? Now, was that long hair? It's sort of hard for me to see in the monitor.
Yes, I had long straight hair, and I've had it for years.
You miss
and
it?
years. No, not at all. No, but I was always afraid to cut my hair. I suppose like a lot of people.
Did you have any idea when you went in yesterday what you wanted to, kind of the image you wanted? I mean, you're kind of hip and groovy and cool, right?
Yeah. No, I just let them do whatever they wanted. I thought that they would probably cut my hair, you know, shorter, you know.
Boy, were you right.
Yeah.
But you know, we could see the before picture, and I felt that Anne, you know, we often think that it's only older women who need to update their image, and yet Anne was stuck in really almost a high school look. And yeah, and it wasn't real. It's funny. I don't think it was making her look younger. It was just making her look kind of dated. So
are you a different person now?
Oh, I feel different. I mean, I feel much better about myself.
I bet you the guy's necks are snapping when you walk down the street this morning, huh? Whoa, what was that? You feel good?
Yeah, I feel really good.
That's really nice. All right, now, we have 2 more, which the results are equally spectacular. I want to thank both of you. Now, just stay right there. We're going to show you some of the before in just a second. As soon as we come, there we go. This is the before of our next mother-daughter pair. They are Dodie Goldberg, age 59, of Natick, who cut short her vacation in Florida this week when she found out she was only a semi-finalist, and her daughter, Karen Bennett, of Framingham, who is a mother of a 3-year-old little boy and who herself just turned 35. All right, now some applause, if you will. Yes, absolutely. Once again, you look pretty spectacular. Welcome. Oh, well, you're just beaming from ear to ear. Karen, how do you feel?
35 years old and real happy.
And how about you, Dodie?
Oh, I feel wonderful. This has been a great vacation ending, right?
Now, wait, what happened? You were in Florida?
I was on vacation, and my daughter called and said we had made the finals, and would I mind coming home a day or so early?
How marvelous.
So I flew home for all of this.
All right, Gloria, what's the story?
All right, well,
here?
let's see the before on Dodie, if we can.
One more time.
Is that okay? And Dodie is attractive, you know, before. She's an attractive lady. You can see that she spends a lot of time in Florida. She has maintained this beautiful tan. But once again, the gray hair is making her complexion tone muddy. That's really the point that I want to make, is that color has such an effect on how our skin tone, our eyes, and, you know, just color energizes our image.
And each time you brightened the look, you didn't so much make it more youthful as you just brightened it. And
I like to think of energy. You know, it's like having your own personal spotlight. I mean, what could be nicer? So what we did was to cover the gray, and we changed her hair from gray to a rich light brown. And if you want to turn, because her hair is so shiny, so silky, she can maintain this with Ultress, which is such an easy to use shampoo and home hair color product because it's in a gel form. And also she's going to be able to maintain the makeup.
Because now she knows how to do it.
Because the makeup artist told her how to do it.
Now let's chat with Karen just for a bit. Now, what did you think when you went in yesterday? Did you have any preconceived notions, or were you just at the mercy of the artists?
I was ready to jump out the window yesterday when they were doing my hair.
Why?
I got nervous as they started pulling out these red hairs out of my head. Then I went home last night, I looked at it, and I said, I'm ready for the blonde.
So you didn't...
I like it, yeah.
Do you like it now?
You know, that's...
No, it's not so terribly different. It's an updated version of what you had.
You know, this is such an
Why are you looking at my hair?
Because it used to look like that.
Yeah, she had very dark.
And I'd like to submit myself as a candidate for makeover. No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, this is such an interesting reaction because while visually the audience and the viewers are seeing, you know, tremendous sort of Shazam, magical change, really, what we have done is a number of subtle little changes. I mean, your hair color was changed just a couple of shades. We just changed the makeup just a little bit. We didn't even cut your hair all that much.
What is the most significant change you affected in each one of these ladies here?
I would say energizing their personal color scheme through hair color, through makeup, and through their clothes. Color really is the story, and it's something that's available to everybody.
Just out of curiosity, what do you think about the way your mom looks?
I love the color. And I liked it great, but now I think this is fabulous. I think she looks younger. I think it looks real pretty.
What about your daughter?
Oh, I think she looks wonderful, really. She
I
needed
just love this. She feels so good.
Gloria, thank you. Gloria Heidi, our fashion consultant, and our mother-daughter teams, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. We hope you're happy. Believe me, I've done this before, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't, but this obviously worked out great. And we have gifts for each one of you here, which I will hand out in just a minute. But first, Good Day will be right back in just a minute. Thanks, you guys look great.
You really do.
And when we come back, we meet three of our country's top criminal lawyers. They all practice and live right here in Boston. They've defended some of the most notorious cases. We'll be right back.
Now you can go back in time to where good men risk everything to triumph over evil. To where a beautiful maiden longs for rescue and her chance to live for eternity with her champion. Now you can go back in time with the Enchanted World from Time Life Books. The Enchanted World is the spellbinding series that will fascinate you with thrilling accounts of legends, myths, and classic tales of good versus evil. Each volume will guide you through the far reaches of fantasy, to a world made of magic and intrigue, to a brave knight facing impossible odds to win the safety of the woman of his dreams, to those returning in victory from mortal combat, reveling in the honor and glory bestowed upon them by their king and his court. Now begin your journey back with Legends of Valor. Your imagination will travel to magical lands inhabited by ancient sorcerers and strange beasts, where legendary heroes descended from the gods dare to venture where no mortal man would go. Other books include wizards and witches, ghosts and magical beasts. Each is bound in luxurious fabric and rich in beautiful illustration, superb text, and master works of art. So enter the Enchanted World and go back to where your imagination can make anything happen.
To order your first book, call now, 1-800-445-8000. It will be sent to you free for 10 days. Keep it and pay just $14.95 plus shipping and handling. Others will follow about one every other month. Keep the ones you want, cancel anytime. So call 1-800-445-8000.
Today on our show, we feel privileged to have some insight from three of the top criminal lawyers in our country. They live and they work in and around the Boston area. They're going to talk about some of the notorious cases that they have represented and give their insight into the criminal justice system from where they sit. First, Tom Troy joins us. Tom has a national reputation for trying over 50 murder cases and winning all but one. He also tried the infamous rape doc case of Dr. Asir Hussain, a case in which a doctor was accused of raping patients at the Brigham and Women's Hospital. Another case you may remember is the Robin Benedict William Douglas case. That involved a Tufts University professor and a combat zone prostitute. Douglas, at the 11th hour, would not go to trial. Instead, he would confess to the murder. Tom Troy had been a police officer for 13 years before becoming a lawyer. In fact, Tom's father was a police officer and tragically killed in the line of duty just weeks before Tom was born. Also joining us this morning is Willie Davis. Willie had been an assistant attorney general before becoming a criminal attorney. In fact, he was on the other side of a case that Tom prosecuted, that of Albert DeSalvo, the Boston Strangler. Some of Willie's most notorious cases are the hitchhike murderer, the Warriors murder case in which a group of teenagers at Fields Corner got into a fight, resulting in one death. In yesterday's Globe, a front-page story tells of the acquittal of a Willie Davis client, the person, James McDonough. McDonough was accused of abetting the Bank of New England in illegal money transfers. But perhaps the King Arthur Motel brawl brought the most attention to Willie. In that case, he successfully defended police officer William McCluskey, who was accused of murder in the ransacking of a Chelsea bar and strip joint. And lastly with us is Pat Piscitelli. Pat has had a host of cases. The most prominent may be the case of Albert DeSalvo, the reputed Boston Strangler. Pat also successfully defended Mark Savoy, a man accused of taking part in a gang rape in what came to be known as the Holbrook 5 case. And I welcome all three of you to Good Day this morning. Nice to see you all.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, reminisce for us, will you? Your favorite cases, those that were the toughest. First, maybe we should start with the fact that, Pat, you and Tom worked together on the DeSalvo case, the Boston Strangler, and Willie, you were on the other side.
Yes, I was.
Talk about that.
Well, I guess I had Albert DeSalvo after Lee Bailey had and after Tom. And I had him as a client when he was killed prior to the time the trial was coming up. That goes back some years now.
It does go back some years. What's it like representing someone like that?
Well, he was an attractive client in that
he was always the topic of conversation, and lawyers want to be included therein because it helps their practice. In reality, I had Albert when I was young in the law, and he was very beneficial to my career, even though I didn't make a quarter with the guy.
But that's part of it, being beneficial to your career. Willie, is that one of the reasons you left the other side and now?
No, that's not the reason. I like the other side. As a matter of fact, I think that's the best side to be on if you want to ensure that justice is done. But as far as Albert DeSalvo was concerned, Donald Kahn was the principal prosecutor, but you'll recall that he was dubbed the Boston Strangler, and that investigation was being conducted by the Attorney General's office, and I was a part of that office at the time. And my connection with him, for the most part, came after his conviction for rape, and when he was confined to Bridgewater and he escaped. And I became more involved in the escape, and we were involved in the apprehension of him.
Talk about the statement you just made, though. The side you were on is the side that ensures that justice is done,
yes.
which implies that the side you're on now doesn't ensure that.
No, that's not the case. But as a prosecutor, you are able to judge the case and determine whether this case ought to be presented or not.
And as a lawyer, as a defending a criminal, you're not?
Well, you don't have any choice. See, you don't have any choice if you're on the side of the defense. The prosecutor decides whether to bring the case or not. And if it's a case that should not be brought, the prosecutor should not bring it.
When someone asks for your representation, and in your heart of hearts you feel that they're guilty, but you represent them as innocent, I mean, what is that like?
$100,000 richer.
Yeah, I know, but you know, you've won all but 50, right? Now we're all...
No, I've won
49. 58?
And lost one.
Lost one,
And
okay.
I'm about to straighten that out.
You are?
Yeah.
How? Which case is that?
I'm going to reverse that case. It's a case over in Middlesex County. A young boy from Arlington in a gang fight with another boy who was a karate expert. And the jury came back, I think, in a confused state and convicted him. But I'll straighten that out. Justice requires that I do that.
Yeah, but I'm going to get down to the bottom line here. You have a way of arguing and presenting to a jury and to the judge someone's innocence, even though in your heart of hearts you might feel that they're guilty. Now, what is that like?
Well, no, that's not. I'm a constitutionalist, and I believe in the Constitution and everybody's right to a fair trial, and that's all I try to give them. The jury does the rest. It's the greatest system in the world. Just look at these people. They'd be great jurors.
The Robin Benedict case.
Yeah.
All right. No body was ever found.
No.
All right. Talk about that case.
Okay. Bill Douglas made a value judgment based on my giving him insight into the fact that he could possibly plead guilty to a lesser included offense.
Is that plea bargaining?
Oh, wait a minute, hold on. Let's understand plea bargaining
all right,
now, because that's a sore spot among criminal trial lawyers.
Yes.
There's no such thing as plea bargaining when you're in the top 10. Every young maverick coming down the street with the assistant district attorney title in front of him tries the case against you. There are no plea bargainings for the guys who are up top. We have to try them all because they know that they've got one step in the doorway when they're prosecuting, because it's an uphill fight for every defense lawyer.
It is.
So I get no plea bargains. I got what the case deserved in Douglas. Douglas got convicted after pleading guilty to manslaughter. It was a proper verdict, and everyone was served well.
How about the James McDonough case, Willie? Just yesterday he was acquitted. The bank was guilty.
Yes.
Right? Why was he not guilty? After all, he was a bookie, and it was his money, right?
Well, he wasn't charged with being a bookie. He was charged with aiding and abetting the bank in their willful failure to file currency transaction reports. The law requires that a banking institution file currency transaction reports for any transaction which exceeds $10,000 in cash. Well, McDonough did not go into the bank with one check exceeding $10,000. He had 3 or 4, and that's what you call structuring your transactions. The bank should have known that this was reportable. There was no way McDonough could know that. He thought it was a loophole. He thought it was a way around the law, and there's nothing wrong with what he did.
So he was not guilty?
Absolutely not guilty.
Pat, Mark Savoy, the Holbrook Five. You represented him, right?
Yes.
Talk about that case.
Well, unusual case wherein they had all, the whole 5 had pleaded guilty initially and were given the suspended sentences, 3 to 5, caused a public outcry, and the upshot was when we were finally given an option of going to trial or going to jail after the judge reversed himself. We went to trial, and we found that the system was such that they all got off, and that they pleaded guilty initially because of the fear that they might be given some time to things which really they weren't guilty of.
And most recently, just last week, the last of the indictments upon which Mark was found guilty of malicious injury to a car, the appeals court reversed and said that that should never have gone to the jury, and they required a finding of not guilty. So you got an interesting situation where 5 young men, including my client, who had pleaded guilty initially to rape and other serious charges, were found not guilty by a jury which heard the evidence in full, which also vindicated the judge who initially had given a 3 to 5 suspended sentence.
When we come back, we'll get the audience involved here. But
I'm going to read the book.
You're going to read the book.
Eileen, before you do that, you mentioned about representing a guilty person.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that's a consideration in terms of whether or not you're going to defend somebody. It's not, you don't take a case because you believe the person to be innocent. You don't take the case simply because he is guilty. That is not a consideration. What you try to do is to make sure, as Tom says, that a person gets what the Constitution says he deserves, a fair trial. And that's why you do it.
And that his case is presented in the most favorable light. You do nothing except let the Commonwealth prove its case beyond reasonable doubt.
All right, but when we come back, I want to know how much show business plays into this. I do. And,
Show business.
and can you have justice in your favor if you can afford a lawyer of your caliber, the 3 of you? Just a lot of things that I think we think about when we read the papers and we see someone get off and we wonder, okay? We'll be right back.
A message from the law offices of James Sokolov on medical malpractice. Medical malpractice is carelessness by a doctor who makes a mistake which causes you injury. It may also be the failure of your doctor to correctly diagnose your condition. If you think you're a victim of medical malpractice, call the law offices of James Sokolov and Affiliates, 742-0900, outside Boston, 1-800-632-8400.
There is a great deal of misconception and misinformation about cosmetic surgery. Often what you hear is not always accurate. If you are interested in learning more about a cosmetic procedure, get the facts from the full-time professionals at the Boston Cosmetic Center. The Boston Cosmetic Center offers a free personal consultation that can help you decide whether cosmetic surgery is right for you. So call 734-9699 for more information. The Boston Cosmetic Center, concerned excellence in cosmetic surgery.
Let's see, what do I want to eat this week? Something light. Something healthy.
Vandecamp's light fillets.
But it's gotta taste great.
They taste remarkably fresh because they're frozen fresh, and they're lightly breaded, so each thick fillet has less than 300 calories.
Oh, I'm gonna need a lot more lemons.
Vandecamp's, the freshest ideas in frozen fish.
California's plumpest pitted prune has a sweet idea.
Sun sweet at supper time, sweet surprise. The plumper the better.
Shrewsbury was settled in the late 1700s by people from Barre, Massachusetts, Richmond, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island.
And it's our next stop on the main streets and back roads of New England, Friday at 7:30.
Criminal attorneys Tom Troy, Willie Davis, and Pat Piscitelli join us this morning talking about their side and their story in terms of criminal defense. What are you holding on your lap, Tom?
Somebody else's story. A book called Fatal Dosage, written by Gary Provost, and it's all about my dear friend Pat and how he tried the Capute case.
Anne Capute, yes, the
Yeah,
nurse.
I'm going to
Pat's
read it
actually been on the show with
by
that book, but now, Pat, you have something to tell us about Tom.
Well, I'm going to reciprocate the kindness that Tom's extended me by suggesting that I understand that Tom is going to be a candidate for DA of Middlesex County as soon as Mr. Harshbarger moves up to the AG's position, which I understand he's running
That's
for
Frank
too, right?
Bellotti's position. Is Tom?
God help us all.
Well, I'll tell you.
Are you going to run?
Seriously, I'm giving serious consideration to it. My people are meeting, and I'm going to announce something next week.
You already sound like a politician. Yes, that means you're going to, huh? You will announce?
I've taken an awful lot from the law. It's time I give some back to the people.
What will that do if he moves into that seat? What would that do for lawyers?
Well, it'll probably loosen up 90% of the criminal business in Middlesex County.
What does that mean?
Means that he and I will get a case or two from Tom Troy.
Is that what it means? All right, we have some questions.
County.
We have some questions here in the audience. Can you stand up for me so we can see you?
Yes. I have a two-part. I would like to know what is your fee for for taking on a client, and what if they can't afford to pay the fee?
That's an excellent question.
Okay, I laughingly say whatever the tariff will bear, it won't cost much everything you own. My minimum fee requirements, because of time constraints, are approximately $100,000 plus expenses. I do pro bono publico work, which is for the good of the people, often throughout the year, and we're very proud of that.
How long do you give a client to pay that money?
Yesterday.
I mean, must he or she go out and borrow it and pay you?
He pays yesterday before he comes.
Really?
Yes.
So they borrow the money. Now, how can someone who's been charged with a major crime get a hold of the money?
They find a way.
His relatives, friends, good banking connections.
Is it worth that? Is it worth that amount of money? Willie, you're shaking your head yes.
Absolutely. If you let me tell you, one of the worst things in the world is to go to jail. And if you can stay out of jail by paying a lawyer $100,000, it's worth it.
But what this lady maybe is saying is that, you know, some of us might be judged guilty and not be able to afford, or charged with a crime and not be able to afford.
Well, that's what Tom was saying when he said that he does pro bono work. All of us do it. As a matter of fact, the majority of the murder cases that I try are pro bono. The court appoints me, and I do it for the court.
Yeah, I'm on a list, too. We're on a list where you're appointed and you're given, you're paid like $25 per hour. $50
Douglas was
So how
pro
often
bono.
do you hit big with a $100,000 case?
Douglas was pro bono. 3-4 times a year.
3 or 4 times a year?
Yeah.
Not bad, Tom. Who else has a question? Okay, can you stand up?
How do you feel about having the TV cameras in the courtroom?
I think it keeps everybody on the ball, stops government from cheating, and it makes sure that defense lawyers properly represent their client.
Does the media ever color the outcome of a case?
Of course.
And is that justice served? Is that justice being served when the media gets involved in trying a case?
When you say that the media gets involved, to what extent do you
Sways
mean?
public opinion, or I mean, gets involved when a case becomes big?
I don't think that that would be a consideration insofar as the cameras in the courtroom are concerned. The cameras in the courtroom, you're doing it right then and there. The problem that I have would be the coverage before you get to the courtroom.
That's what I'm talking about, Willie.
Well, that's always a problem before you get to the courtroom, because the more media coverage prior to getting into court, the more the possibility that jurors will have been affected by it.
Well, editing as well, by the way. When the district attorney makes his closing argument, and no disrespect intended, I hopefully can assist the Middlesex County soon, but when he makes his closing argument, they're not supposed to play the Star-Spangled Banner in the background. Remember that, Eileen.
Eileen, I did that Capute
Do they play it when you make your closing argument?
Under the wind-blown sails of old ice.
Yeah. Can you stand up for a question?
Yes, you say that you want to uphold the Constitution, yet there are people that are getting let out on technicalities. How can you sleep at night when you know that you're letting people out that can harm other people?
Very comfortably, because it's a very serious question, and I appreciate you asking it. It's important, I tell you, important that the Constitution be upheld. If better that 1,000 guilty people go free than one innocent man spend a day in jail. Remember that lawyers are like doctors in upholding the Constitution. If there are 2 people injured, one has an arterial bleeding and the other has a superficial wound, you stop the bleeding. We have to prevent wrongs and ills being garnished on the Constitution of the United States of America. People have a right to be free from illegal searches. The 4th Amendment, the exclusionary rule, all of these things from that great court, the Warren Court, are important in a modern legal environment. It's important to you, me, and everyone else.
Can you add to that?
Well, I was going to suggest that the word technicality is really a misnomer. You call a constitutional right a technicality. I mean, if a person has a confession wrung from him, or he's coerced into making statements which are inculpatory, that's not a technicality which keeps it out of evidence. It's a constitutional right that be a voluntary statement.
How much of this is show business, though? How much of it is show business? You sit with a client that has been accused, and you work with them in terms of their image on the stand and how they present themselves in the courtroom. I know that happens, so how much of it is show business? How much is justice?
Well, I like to think that it's all justice, Eileen, but I think a great deal of it is your showbiz approach. I mean, I know that Tom goes into his, what I call his poetic act, which has a tremendous persuasive influence upon the jury, has an impact upon them because it puts across his message on behalf of his client. Jurors love to be entertained. They don't want to be bored. And I think that that's what sets us apart from others who go in and become a monotone presenters. We're not that way.
Let me just ask you, Tom, how would you change things if you were, if you won that seat of Middlesex County?
Oh, if I became district attorney?
Yes.
Well, I think what I'd be able to do is to realistically plea bargain. I think I could clean up the docket and we could start from scratch and determine who really belongs in jail and what should be disposed of at the lower court levels. There are, in no true sense of the word, is there any plea bargaining that takes place in Middlesex County.
And you want that?
There are, by the way, in every county of this great Commonwealth, about 90 to 95% conviction rates. So no one can claim, I'm going to get more convictions than the other guy. The fact of the matter is the government has it their own way. Let's just do it right.
I thank all three of you for joining us this morning. A little insight into your work. Thank you. Pat Piscitelli, Willie Davis, Tom Troy.
Don't forget the book.
And the book. Thanks a lot. We'll be right back with more of Good Day. Stay with us.
Miller's Court, a man's refusal to buckle up brings him to court.
The law is set forth for a reason. Myself, I think the law is working. We're saving lives.
The police state is upon us, and we must resist.
Also attempting to redirect some of the traffic flow with detours and roadblocks.
Oh, great. Great. More officers telling us what to do.
Have also shown a slight increase according to local officials. Now, with an editorial comment,
Detour?
one of the original sponsors of the seatbelt law,
brother.
City Councilor Jack McKinnon. Editorial are not
look at these
necessarily
guys.
those
They're
of
everywhere.
COT and its management.
Many people complain that the city is doing too much to regulate automobiles.
Yeah, amen to that.
It's not doing enough.
What?
Our seatbelt law has
You've got to be kidding. Sure, take my paycheck, tax my car, strap me into my seat. The next thing you know, they'll be tucking me in a bed. Alan, no blade.
Pull over!
License and registration, please.
Officer, what's this all about?
You have no license plate. Must have fallen off, right? You're gonna get a ticket for driving without a plate and a $15 fine for ignoring the seatbelt law. Those are for wearing, Mr. Newman.
Hey, where do you get off telling me what to do in my own car? Keep your seatbelt laws to yourself.
Earl Newman's determined refusal to buckle up has taken him all the way to court, where Councilman Jack McKinnon, a key sponsor and supporter of the seatbelt law, will testify against him as witness for the state's prosecution. Hello, I'm Arthur Miller, and welcome to Miller's Court. For tonight's heated case, two great trial lawyers will help us determine the outcome. Representing the state is Jack Zolkind, a tough and freewheeling criminal attorney in Massachusetts. Jack is famous for a number of national cases dealing with drugs and white-collar crime, and has tried and won some 20 murder cases. Representing the defendant is Massachusetts attorney Pat Piscitelli, a criminal trial lawyer with a string of clients that reads like a who's who of famous cases, including nurse Anne Capute, who was acquitted of mercy killing, and the classic murder case of Albert DeSalvo, the Boston Strangler. Now, in a moment, you can help decide whether the mandatory seatbelt law should be enforced and Earl Newman punished, or whether the law is, in fact, a violation of Earl Newman's constitutional rights. The trial's up next, right here on Miller's Court.
Please, you solemnly swear the evidence you're about to give to this jury will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do. Please be seated.
We join our trial as City Councilor Jack McKinnon is about to be questioned by prosecuting attorney Jack Zalkind.
Councilor McKinnon, what has brought you to this point where you've worked so hard for the safety belt law?
In my district, a bus driver had an accident. He wasn't wearing a seatbelt. He lost control of his vehicle. It caromed out of control and killed a 4-year-old boy.
Well, let me ask you this. What have your studies shown about national injuries with regard to automobile accidents?
Well, basically, there are 40,000 fatalities on U.S. highways caused by automobile accidents each year and 4 million injuries.
Now, what do safety belts have to do with preventing these injuries and accidents?
Well, studies have shown that if we wore seat belts and safety belts, we could reduce those injuries and fatalities by 50% across the board.
50%?
50%.
Well, what do you say to these do-gooders who say that it's an invasion of their privacy when you have these safety belt laws?
I say that it's an invasion of privacy when a police officer knocks on your door at 2 o'clock in the morning with the news that your daughter or son, his brains have been smashed against the windshield because they weren't wearing a seatbelt.
Well, this defendant says that when you don't wear a safety belt, it doesn't have any effect upon anybody else. What do you say to him?
It has a tremendous effect on all of us. It costs over $4 billion a year for highway accidents. If we wore seatbelts, we could reduce highway accidents by 50%, a savings of $2 billion.
$2 billion?
$2 billion.
Thank you, sir.
The prosecution's case depends on a showing that wearing seatbelts will save lives. Otherwise, it's an invasion of privacy. Here's cross-examination by Pat Piscitelli.
Councilman McKinnon, you do know, do you not, that Maine and Vermont have already rejected similar seatbelt legislation. Massachusetts has it on the referendum for possible repeal, and that Illinois has already declared unconstitutional. You are aware of that, are you not?
What does this have to do with your client's inability to obey the laws of the state?
You are aware of that, are you not?
No, I am not aware of that.
And, Counselor, you do know as well that airbags are proven to be more safe and can prevent injuries and fatalities greater than the seatbelt law.
I know that, but I say to you that let's use the seatbelt law because it's available to us now.
And that would be less restrictive, would it not, as well? Not impinge upon the right of choice of my client, would it?
Well, when they enacted the legislation which will implement the bag rule, I say let's do it. But in the meantime, let's use the law that we have, the seatbelt law. It will save lives.
This would cost the car manufacturers more money, would it not? Do you advocate as well roadblocks to determine if people are using seatbelts?
If roadblocks are necessary and they're within the purview of the law and they're enacted as legislation, yes, then I support obeying the laws of the land.
I have nothing further.
Pat Piscitelli trying to show that airbags would be better than seatbelts, and therefore the regulation is unreasonable. Now the defendant, Earl Newman, takes the stand.
Mr. Newman, you are a sales representative who sells and services copying machines throughout New England states, are you not?
That's right.
How often do you travel?
I travel every day. I travel sometimes 400 miles a day. Last year I put 54,000 miles on my car.
You have a good driving record?
Had only one ticket in the last 28 years and a couple of parking tickets.
Do you wear seatbelts when you're working?
No, I don't.
Do you consider that car as your castle, your other home?
I consider that car as my office away from home. I have my files in the car. I eat in the car, nap in the car, do all my work in the car. I find that driving so much, 400 miles, 500 miles a day, a seatbelt gives me unnecessary strain. I can't move, I can't pay my tolls, I sweat, I'm a big person.
Are you against the seatbelt law?
I'm against any law that doesn't give me the right of choice. I'm against the law that doesn't uphold the Constitution, and I feel that it's my right. No, I think it's my obligation as a citizen to challenge any law that I don't agree with.
By the way, have you been in charge of securing some signatures for a referendum for the repeal of the seatbelt law?
Yes, I have. I've gotten 45,000 signatures, many more than is needed.
No further questions?
Earl Newman's defense is that the car is his home, and it's just unreasonable for the state to reach inside his home and tell him to buckle up. Here's cross-examination.
Mr. Newman, you have a wife and some children?
That's right.
And when your wife and your children are in your automobile, you encourage them to wear their safety belts.
Yes, I do.
Because you believe that safety belts do help people, do you not, sir?
Yes, and I believe they should have the choice.
All right. Now, when your children went to school, sir, They had to be inoculated before they were allowed admission. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And taking a needle and sticking it in someone's arm is certainly an infringement of their privacy, isn't it?
What does that got to do with seatbelts?
Sir, let the jury decide that. The fact of the matter is it's a mandatory law that you let your children go through because it was beneficial to them. When they were born, sir, their eyes were washed with a solution so they wouldn't infect themselves with gonorrhea if it were present.
What has gonorrhea got to do with seatbelts?
Did you object to that, sir?
No.
Your lawyer said that you have a wonderful safety record. You observed the speeding laws, and you only got one ticket in 25 years. Is that correct? And so that law you felt was proper, and you observed it. Isn't that correct?
Which law?
The law of speeding, sir.
That's correct.
But this law you don't like, so you decided not to observe the law. Isn't that correct, sir?
Because I feel that the law doesn't give you any choice, and that it offends the Constitution of the United States.
Sir.
And it takes away the right of privacy.
Sir, did you observe the law by not following through and paying the ticket?
I don't agree with the law.
Thank you, sir.
Jack Zolkine trying to show that Earl Newman picks and chooses the laws he likes to obey. Now, closing arguments to the jury. First, Pat Piscitelli.
Members of the jury, the issue in this case is not whether people should or should not buckle up. The issue is whether or not the government has a right to mandate and tell you that you must do it. That's the issue, freedom of choice. Sure, there's some money saved, but where does it end? Where does it end? If the beneficial effects and the money which is saved, be it $1 a person annually or $2, whatever that small amount may be, if that's the test and the general public's weal is to be considered, well, why don't we abolish smoking? Why don't we abolish drinking? If you let them do this, what can't they do? Why don't we then say, there'll be no more fat people? Because that causes, obesity causes heart attacks. It decreases longevity, and it raises insurance rates. Why, if the government can do this, what can't they do? Why don't we mandate crash helmets? More people get killed by injuries to the head in car accidents. Why don't we say everybody who drives a car must wear a crash helmet? How about roadblocks? Why can't we say, as they do in drunken driving cases, let's have roadblocks. Let's see who is not wearing a seatbelt. Why can't that be mandated? How about saving the children on buses? They're exempt. It's discriminatory. This is a freedom of choice issue, ladies and gentlemen. And when the government is allowed to trample that choice of alternatives, we become automatons, no longer individuals. Our freedom is trampled upon. Don't let that happen. Declare this unconstitutional. Thank you.
Freedom of choice. Where will it end? If the government can make you buckle up, can it make you slim down? Here's Jack Zolkine.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is not about this witness, nor is it about that witness. It's about you and I. The argument is that whenever a law comes down that seems to invade our privacy, it shouldn't be law at all. If that's the case, we should cut out Social Security, we should cut out minimum wages, we should cut out inoculations, as you heard this man say he agreed with. The fact of the matter, ladies and gentlemen, this man here has decided himself that he is going to disobey a law that has become the law of this Commonwealth, that has been passed by our legislators, by throwing a ticket in a policeman's face. Either this nation that we live in is going to be a land of the law, or it isn't. It's as simple as that. I will tell you something right now. If there were 50,000 deaths last year because of cholera, and if there were 2 million people that were sick and dying from it, no one would object to having the government line us up in front of the hospitals and take injections so we wouldn't die. Well, that's what's happening in this country today because of these accidents. And we've got to do something about it, and our government, in a paternalistic method, is doing it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a lot of baloney. This law should stay, and it's effective, and it should work.
All rise, please.
Now it's your turn to decide whether the seatbelt law is a violation of individual rights or not. If you think it's a legitimate law, then vote to convict Earl Newman by calling 1-900-210-5111. But if you believe that the law is invalid, as Mr. Newman claims, then vote not to convict him by calling 1-900-210-5115. Remember, the telephone company will charge 50 cents per call. We'll return to talk with our lawyers and jurors after a short break. Our jury's returned from deliberating whether Earl Newman should be convicted of violating the seatbelt law. But before we talk to them, let's chat with the lawyers. Jack, do you have any feeling as to why people are so upset about the seatbelt law?
Yeah, I think that my own position is pretty obvious. I'm a criminal defense lawyer, and when I gave up prosecuting some 15 years ago, I swore I'd never do it again. But when I was asked to come on your show, I feel so strongly about the seatbelt law that I took a different position. And I feel the same way.
Why?
Well, because there's a lot of people dying, and we seem to find no reasons to stop them or no way to stop them. And this seems to be about the easiest way to stop deaths.
Pat, your client admits he violated the statute. He's guilty. How come you're defending him?
Well, many people violate laws which they feel to be unconstitutional, and he's acting within the parameters of the judicial process which allows him to test the constitutionality of that statute. He's doing exactly what the Constitution says he has a right to do, test the propriety of a law which he deems to be unconscionable and excessive use of the police power.
Let's talk with the jury now. Joy, how did you vote?
I voted guilty because I believe that there is a method of public dissent that he has without disobeying the law. He does have the right through referendum without deliberately disobeying the law in this particular instance.
But you heard Pat, it's his right, every citizen's right, whether it's Martin Luther King or anyone else, to say, I'm going to disobey the law and challenge it.
That's right. He has the right to disobey the law, but he has the right to pay the fine then, too.
But what do you think about whether the law is valid or invalid?
I think the law is a valid law.
Why?
I think that you're saving lives. The public good is better than the individual rights. I think we're saving lives in general.
Just let them in the door. And when they get in the door, there'll be a per se law, there'll be breathalyzer machines convicting people on the road, there'll be roadblocks, there'll be 55-mile-an-hour speed traps, there'll be a police state.
A police state.
Exactly.
We'll all be goose-stepping.
Maybe.
Now,
It's
you're
possible.
Jerry Williams, right? You're a talk show host. We should introduce you to the viewers. You've been leading a campaign in Massachusetts.
That's right.
On the seatbelt. How do you answer him, Terry?
I think there should be a per se law. There's a per se law in 42 states in this country. Massachusetts should be so different.
Exactly.
It saves lives.
Exactly.
There should be a 55-mile-per-hour speed limit. It saves 4,000 lives a year in this country, but Jerry doesn't want that. This issue is really an issue of saving lives and saving injuries, and it affects everybody, not just the individual.
Doesn't Earl Newman have the right to say, it's my life, this is a free country, get off my back. If I want to smoke, I'll smoke. If I want to eat ice cream 24 hours a day and clog my veins and arteries and fall down and die, it's not the state's business.
It certainly is the state's business.
It is not the state's business, Terry. That the seatbelt law dictates people's personal behavior, and I don't believe that the government's role is to dictate personal behavior. The government has a responsibility to educate the public to make good decisions.
I think it's only fair as well that you indicate that Terry really speaks as the governor's propaganda chief. You introduced me, and he should be introduced as the governor's propaganda chief.
Propaganda?
Propaganda.
You make him sound like Goebbels, Jerry. He doesn't look like Goebbels. Joe?
The law is set forth for a reason. Myself, I think the law is working. We're saving lives. And if this man goes out and he's not going to obey this law and he's not going to obey that law, and, well, he doesn't mind this one, so he'll obey it. I mean, you know, what are we going to be dealing with then?
Well, how do you answer Kathy and Jerry who say police state? The state in a free society, and we pride ourselves, this is a free society, state can't intrude in your car, in your personal habits. These are personal things. He's uncomfortable with a belt on.
There's a difference between using the illustration of a car and many other things in our life. There's a difference between a privilege and a right, and those who say that we can do anything we want within our car lose sight of the fact that we're dealing there with a privilege, not the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
This is one of the few laws in which the regulation controls the individual's behavior and is designed to protect only that individual.
That's not necessarily true, Arthur. You've got to stop and figure. In most automobile accidents, there's a tremendous amount of violent action that happens when that car crashes. sideswipe it, for example, that could knock Earl out from behind the wheel. His automobile now becomes an unguided missile on the highway. Does he have a right to unleash that unguided missile at you and your family, or me and mine? I say no.
Arthur, I'm concerned about these lawyers here. Did they take a urinalysis before they came into this courtroom? I mean, a mandatory urinalysis. Because that's what's...
Nor did our jury.
You mean you have nor did the nor did the cameraman, nor did anybody else. But pretty soon, as the president wanted his drug commission, his crime commission, wants everybody to take a urinalysis. Pretty soon, that's going to be the condition.
State.
That's right. The
Jerry would have you believe that since you can't engage in sexual intercourse in public, pretty soon the police state is going to say no sexual intercourse at home with your wife.
I'm looking at reality. I'm telling you, the President Reagan's present crime commission has indicated they want all state employees, all federal employees and contractors to take urinalysis so that we can invade people's bodies now.
Paula?
Well, I think it should be instilled more for children, like in school buses, and because they're the ones that can be thrown around because they're in an open space in a school bus. And even in the back seat, like babies in back seats of cars, and that's important. But
you're worried about...
We're adults, so it's up to us if we want to do it and protect ourselves.
Well, I heard him testify that he encourages his children to buckle up as a matter of free choice.
Yes.
As a matter of free choice, not at the end of a governmental boot, which is what Jerry is worried about.
My children encourage me. That's why I wear mine, up till they pass the law.
But you'll tolerate the state telling you to do it.
I liked it when my children did it, and I tolerate it with the state doing it.
We'll find out how our jury voted on whether Earl Newman should be convicted of not wearing his seatbelt after a short break. We're back with our jury to find out whether Earl Newman has been convicted for disobeying the seatbelt law. Ms. Forewoman, how did the jurors vote?
Arthur, 8 of the jurors decided that the law was valid and voted to convict. 4 of the jurors decided that the law was invalid and voted not to convict.
Thank you very much. Now let's find out how you viewers at home voted in this case. Most viewers felt that the seatbelt law is an infringement on Mr. Newman's civil rights and voted to let him off without punishment. Thank you all for your votes. No part of an automobile has ever incited such passionate grassroots debate as the seatbelt. People who hardly bat an eye at other forms of regulation regard the seatbelt law as the first step toward having Big Brother in their own back seat. Despite good intentions, is the refusal to buckle up, like smoking cigarettes or riding a motorcycle, a matter of personal choice? At odds here are the individual's right to act self-destructively and the government's desire to protect people from themselves. In any case, it remains a tug-of-war between man and mandate as to who will be king of the road. Thanks for joining us on Miller's Court. This is Arthur Miller. Next week, should a gay couple be allowed to adopt a hard-to-place child despite some community objections? Join us next Sunday for Miller's Court.
It's free, but more questions are raised than were answered. The Anatomy of a Murder is next.
This is Weekend with Dave Finnegan for Saturday, May 31st, 1986.
Well, good evening and welcome once again here to Weekend Saturday Night. Well, this is the week when the Edison Company says that the $10.5 million they'll lose because of their mismanaged nuclear plant in Plymouth will be passed on to you, the consumer. File that under Give Me a Break, will you? And down in Rhode Island, it's business as usual. Now, Rhode Island has its problems politically, let's face it. Chief Justice Bevilacqua now says he'll step down after having the organized crime network of Rhode Island draped all over him over the last year and a half, but you got to hand it to him, he hung in until the last minute. And the Boston police will be busier than ever starting next week. Yep, they got a dress code for the cabbies here in town, and the police have to see to it that they don't catch anybody driving a cab while wearing shorts or a halter top. Now, isn't that important? Get the police working like that? That's fabulous. Well, we're going to take a look today at one of the saddest trials I've seen in a long time, raising more questions than it answered for sure and resulting in a not guilty for Ralph Richard. We'll talk to 3 top criminal attorneys who are going to give you an inside look at what happened in the Richard trial and what's likely to happen when Donna Richard comes before the bar of justice. All of it coming up next, right after this. Here in this station that Ralph and Donna Richard of Rhode Island first told the world about the kidnapping of their infant daughter, Jerry Ann, pleading for her abductors at that time to return her to a loving home. Well, days later, her small body was found raped and murdered in an alley not very far from their apartment. And the investigation that followed led police to charge both Ralph and Donna with causing their baby's death, and 2, that they had conspired to hide their guilt with that kidnapping story. Well, last week, Ralph Richard was acquitted of charges of conspiracy and rape. And Hank Philippi of the New England News brought us this story.
Ralph Richard and his mother had waited until the last second to enter the courtroom, both looking apprehensive as they walked in. Richard glancing at his watch. It was 11:10. The judge threatened spectators with contempt if there were any outbursts at the verdict.
Sheriffs, no one leaves the courtroom.
And then the jurors filed in, a truck driver, a teacher, a bookkeeper. For the last 8 weeks, they had heard about the Richards' Pawtucket apartment, the window where the kidnapper was supposed to have entered, heard how 4-month-old Jerry Ann was raped and killed, how she was found in an alley, heard Ralph Richard insist he was innocent.
Woman, will you please rise?
As a factory worker from Woonsocket stood to give the verdicts, the courtroom was absolutely silent. If guilty, Ralph Richard could go to jail for life.
First-degree child molestation. Is your verdict guilty or not guilty? Not guilty.
4 more times, not guilty, Ralph Richard heard, not guilty on all counts. It was over in less than 2 minutes.
Not guilty. Ladies and gentlemen, is this your true verdict? Yes, it is. The defendant is discharged.
8 weeks of tension released as lawyer and client embraced. The jury was dismissed. For Richard's mother, a vigil had ended. Ralph Richard left the court a free man to a clamor of cameras sounding quite bitter.
God kept us strong. The truth, and nothing but the truth, beat the insult that I'd had against me for the past year.
What were you thinking throughout the trial?
I have no questions to answer.
Can you just tell us?
None. How sweet it is. That's all I can say.
Mrs. McGowan, what do you think?
Somebody's going to get
Got into the bridge. That's what I think. For prosecutors, however, long faces at the end of a long trial.
I believed in the system before, and I believe in the system now. The jury has spoken, and there's nothing more I can say.
Well, before I introduce tonight's guest to take a look at what happened in that trial and what may happen in the future, I should tell you that Ralph Richard himself was going to be here, except that he remembered on the evening in which he had begun to give evidence to incriminate his wife, I called him a sleaze. Well, such as it is, I was supposed to retract that prior to the time he would appear in the program. Instead, he's not here. So we will move forward with this, with 3 of the most illustrious criminal attorneys here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And let's take a look at this trial. Pat Piscitelli, who's with us from Brockton, famed in the Anne Capute case, now chronicled in a book entitled Fatal Dosage. And we have Tom Troy here with us, who needs no introduction to this particular program, from the Douglas and Benedict case and the Long Kwong Kwan and some of the others, and Larry O'Donnell, who is the dean, really, of criminal trial lawyers throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and was with us just a week ago on another issue. Larry, let's start with you as the elder statesman of this group. What about this trial? Here's a man who appeared to be incredible in his stories, incriminated his wife, recanted his incrimination, seemed to foxy around with the facts from time to time, and yet he goes free. How did it happen?
I would say that it happened because they tried the case in a courtroom. There's discipline in a courtroom. There's rules of court. But I think one of the most telling things, the jurors sat there for 8 weeks. It happened because they had inexperienced prosecutors. What they do, the young man, I observed him making his final summation. He said to the jury, this is an easy case. They made it easy for you. You're not going to have any trouble with this, convicting a father of rape of a 4-month-old daughter. anytime jurors take a note, they're conscientious about it. I say many of the acquittals that occur are occurring because prosecutors, they're dynamite law students, they have acquired nothing in law school. It's a bad place to prepare to become a lawyer. And the professorial people that they have classroom skills. They can't import any courtroom skills to
So the prosecutor didn't do a good job and Richard goes free?
No. The prosecutor didn't have the skills that the defense lawyer had. And what happens here is I can take the position that I personally make a value judgment, miles away from the courtroom, didn't hear any of the witnesses. I'd make a value judgment. Richards was a sleaze and guilty. Now, that isn't any good. Legal guilt occurs in the courtroom, and he didn't go. What happened in that courtroom
they didn't get enough evidence to do it.
Not proved.
Okay. Thomas.
I think he was being kind to Mr. Richards and his verbiage, sleaze. I made a value judgment out front like most people do as a citizen since I wasn't trying the case. He was guilty. I disliked him. I never liked him. I still don't like him. His lawyer is Mandrake the Magician. I mean, you talk about rising above the multitudes in the law. He had to crawl out of a hole just to get even on level ground. Here you have a man being tried for raping his own baby, a little beautiful baby that was flashed on television every chance the press had it, in an effort to properly try him, by the way. I tell you that I look at that lawyer and I say to him, I wonder if I could go back to the same school he went to and try and learn a few tricks.
So if you've got a good lawyer and you're guilty, that is, objectively guilty, you can get away with it. Pat?
No, I think my feelings were that, number one, he had a good lawyer, but that wasn't what really made me think that the guy was going to be found not guilty. There were several things that made me think the jury would come back that way. One was that the prosecution's whole theory was that no one else could have come into that bedroom through a window and without waking the people therein or without disrupting the things. And I was amazed when I saw defense come forward with two cops who apparently some 2 months or thereabouts before had, upon a report of a break and entering at that home, come into the very same window, saw the baby in the crib, saw them sleeping, never told them, never disturbed them, and left. I mean, that blew the case out of the water.
That was a damaging piece of evidence,
David,
wasn't it?
if you were sitting as a juror and you heard that, you would think that the prosecution must have known that that happened because the information about the cops having come in has to be known by the prosecution.
Should have been logged someplace, right?
Well, you think it was suppressed or was secreted by the prosecution, and you would be upset at that having been done, and you'd say, I'm going to...
What about the fact, though, we have a guy 5 or 6 days after they find his infant's body, and he blames his wife for killing the baby, on the premise that she caught him cheating with another woman. What are we dealing with here?
Yeah, but that's because of Hotel Harry, the new FBI agent who now takes you to a hotel to interrogate you. Under nice, solid circumstances, they have a drink, have a little food, let's chat. That's their new theory on how to get you to confess.
And you blame your wife, Tom?
Somebody else. Listen, they told him all about how bad his wife was. I'm not sticking up for this guy. I think he's a sleaze.
But how bad can you be to be blaming your wife for the murder without any, unless you have evidence that she was involved?
Well, she was doing other things, I understand.
See, when the people look at these distinguished lawyers, it suggests to them what should have happened. The Attorney General down there is a former nun, and she's known as Attila the Nun. She's another person that has all kinds of ideas, but no skills. Skills occur in the courtroom, and you pick them up by going there every day.
Attila the Nun.
Yeah, Attila the Nun. Yeah, she's the Attorney General down there. Now, see, what they should have done, you saw how Tom felt. Take Tom in and make him the prosecutor. They do that in England all the time.
Queen's Counsel.
When I tried cases years back, a Freddie Doyle on the Brinks case, he was at least 60. They were experienced men. You can't acquire skills in a law school. If she had put in and engaged an experienced, distinguished lawyer, can you imagine Tom Troy, Mr. Piscitelli, Pat, handling the evidence in this case? No, John O'Connor was experienced, the defense counsel. Yeah, the point is, You saw, all the people saw Larry Bird last night. He had more skills than anyone there. The same way in the courtroom. That's a contest going on. You must have experienced and skilled men in there. Right now, I'm a special attorney general on a matter. Earl Cooley's with me on the matter. Marshall Simons. These men all have all kinds. Because when you have a serious matter, at least you should put in a player.
Well, what you're saying is you got a mismatch. You're
That's
saying
right.
Right? Pick your jury out of Block 10 in Walpole. Give me the first 12 cons and it'll hook them in 5 minutes.
Why? Because they're savvier?
Because they know that's a terrible crime, and they understand motions in limine, how you keep things out. I tell you, the lawyer was Mandrake the magician.
Well, how did he get away, Pat, with the notion of the semen situation? They found some semen in the baby, apparently. Now, it was never diagnosed as being Richard's semen, but he didn't deny that it could have been his. What kind of a man are we dealing with here?
David, all he said was, I think he said that he had been frustrated by lack of sex with his wife, and he had ejaculated into a towel, and he said that it could have been his. He didn't say it was, nor was it proved to be his.
Who says things like that?
Well, look, that was the weak part of the case, really. That part of the case really turned me off. I couldn't quite stomach or accept that portion, but they had a weak circumstantial case, really. I mean, you look at it, in retrospect, it's a weak circumstantial case. And you had also a father who came across as a loving person of his daughter, a person who said, I would rather die than do that to my daughter, than rape my daughter. You know, that was so heinous a crime that there were those people who couldn't believe he would do that. And there are a lot of women on that jury. I think that was a wise idea, putting women on there. And some I saw who were, you know, in their middle ages, who would be more the motherly type, would say, I can't believe this guy, as he emoted on the stand for 4 days, could do such a heinous, offensive thing. I think that played a part in it, too.
Why didn't somebody hammer away at him as being a rat who turned in his wife the minute he was cornered?
Well, there's the lack of experience that Brother O'Donnell's talking about.
Here's another factor in the case. That was an experienced judge down there. He didn't put up with any nonsense. And you have to have in mind, these jurors having an oath and having a judge instruct them, this is the law. If you can reconcile any facts in this case, any hypothesis that would suggest not guilty, it's your duty to find him not guilty. That's essentially an instruction that you're going.
I'm saying if we had to rely on Richards' credibility, he was not a very good
all he needs is a
guy.
tall hat and a cape and send him down by the railroad track.
Suddenly he's got religion. He's walking around with a Bible. He's praised the Lord. I mean, give me a break here. This is the greatest Reformation I've seen.
He threw holy water all over himself.
Exactly.
But that's what prosecutors usually do in their cases. They have holy water. They spill it on all their witnesses.
He went to the Colson School of Faith.
We're going to take a break here. We're going to be back in a couple of minutes. We'll have a look to what's going to happen to Donna Richard when that comes up. More on the Richards case. We'll be right back. All right, we're back here taking a look here at Anatomy of a Murder, and that is the Richards murder, which is still unsolved, apparently, but we've got some pretty strong thoughts here. Pat, I interrupted you as we were leaving. You wanted to make a point on Ralph Richards. Do it, and then let's talk a little about Donna.
Yeah, Jay, what I was going to say was I think that he was pretty much almost brainwashed, on the verge of being brainwashed into thinking his wife had done it, because I know that he said his wife did it after some time. I think that the police told him so many bad things about his wife having had some abortions, the fact that she married in the past, which he hadn't known prior to the time he married her. He came to believe that that was in fact the case, and to think that she could have done it, though he never said she did it.
I have trouble with that. I mean, I have trouble believing that. Look, you can tell me all the nasty things you want about this woman that he sat in this studio and said, my loving wife, my darling wife, please return our child. 6 days later, the man learns that she had some bad past, and he throws her up for a murder rap?
Well, I'm told that they had about 6 different conversations with him, the police did, and taped 6 conversations with him in which they constantly badgered him and talked to him, I think, into thinking that, in fact, his wife could have done it, though he never said she had.
Let me say this quick, Pat. The press poisoned the well as far as this case was. Massive prejudicial pre-trial publicity. But the other thing is people lose sight of this. Ralph Richards looked better than the policeman did. If you got to look at the policeman that dogged the case, that he had tears in his eyes afterwards, he looked like he was a fugitive. I mean, it's amazing when the prosecution has to put on their witnesses, here's Ralph Richards, the most detestable thing that could be charged. The policeman looked like he did it. He was cruddy looking. The so-called chief investigator. I would have picked Richards over him if I just had a look at 2 people. It's amazing.
Oh, Richards was a cleaned-up act by the time he got into the courtroom, right? And he's got his Bible pressed close to his chest and the rest of it. I don't understand why a jury, having seen that massive pretrial publicity, and I agree with you, totally prejudicial against him, I don't believe that a jury would say, oh, he's reclaimed himself, he's a nice man these days.
The jury was really sanitized. They inquired the voir dire as the jurors prior to the time they took, took their oath as jurors to determine if, in fact, they had any biases or prejudices.
Well, they must have been in the Himalayas if they didn't have any.
No, the judge did with Richards. I hated him.
The judge did an excellent job sanitizing that jury. And just quickly, Tom Troy had a case after Dr. Hussein is convicted in Suffolk County. He takes him to Middlesex County, and they get a jury that didn't see all that massive publicity, and he has him acquitted. I already said
where are these people when this publicity is going on? What
well,
kind
they're
of a
busy.
jury
They're paying their mortgages. They're worried about their children. This idea that they're captivated by all the print media is a myth. I've had jurors that actually were clean, and I know these experienced
Help me with Donna
did.
Richard now. The prosecutors say they're coming forward and they're going to try Donna Richard. On what theory are they going to convict Donna Richard if they don't have a conspiracy with Ralph?
Well, they've knocked out the conspiracy charge already because there's no one to conspire with.
They conspire with, and this hurts them evidentiary-wise, does it?
Oh, sure.
There's certain things they can't get in now, right?
Yes.
What's likely to happen?
The judge had a great deal of foresight. He had a lot of wisdom. He divided that trial right at the beginning. He wouldn't let them get tried together. So he was doing a good job from the beginning.
You couldn't really try them together. You wouldn't be able to set up and promote an adequate defense for your client. Plus the fact that they're going to, a lot of that stuff's going to go out against her, even though it might be admissible under some circumstances, not going to be for others, and to be so inflammatory and prejudicial. They're not going to allow it at her trial. She's going to walk too. They're going to go hand in hand.
What would you do,
Dave,
if she get on and said, my husband did it, the lousy bee?
Right. That's exactly right. What would you do?
Yeah.
What would you do? It's just as credible, I suppose, as...
create a tremendous problem.
Yes,
for a jury. That happened here in Suffolk County.
Yes, you did. That's right.
All right. On top of that, you have spousal privileges. Everything else that takes place here is going to come into play. The other lawyer is going to go to school on John O'Connor's pot, and he'll be successful.
But what can they say about Donna Richards that amounts to the charge that's come out of the grand jury? What evidence do they have?
That's the best man to ask on that, because he took a gal at the low port of the totem pole in the hospital when all the prestigious doctors and everything had run for cover and vacation, and he took her out, and there was tremendous publicity on that,
What do they have, Pat, in your opinion? What did they have that they could give to a jury and say, convict Donna Richards of murder?
If they have nothing more than what they had in her husband's case, in Ralph's case, I would think they'd have a tough time in getting conviction of that thing, David, no question.
Can they use Ralph's statements against her?
Well, if it was done at a time when she was there and it was an adoptive admission of sort, yes, they could. If it was said outside of her presence, no, they can't use it. If they can show some kind of joint venture or joint effort at the time, and statements were made in pursuance of it, yes, they could. But there is none of that stuff. That's going to go out.
We only have about 15 seconds here. I want to know a prediction. Donna Richards, will she get off?
Not guilty, probably never tried.
Thomas?
Not guilty, probably never tried.
Power betting man, I'd bet on an NG, too.
There you go. All right, gentlemen, thanks a lot. We appreciate it. It's terrific. We're going to wrap up with you. We'll be back right after this. Up for tonight. I do want to thank my special guests, Larry O'Donnell, Tom Troy, and Pat Piscitelli, three of the best criminal defense attorneys, and I think one of the best looks after a trial that I've ever heard of. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be with you again next Saturday night at 7. You be back with us at that time. Will you? Have a nice weekend. Take care.
CBS Sports Sunday. This is CBS.
Today was the greatest day of my whole life. Mom and Dad surprised me and took me to Riverside Park. I'll bet I can get them to bring me back to Riverside real soon.
Have you driven a Ford?
Now get 6.9% financing or cash back on the purchase or red carpet lease of most new Ford cars and trucks. Up to $600 cash back on Ford Ranger, $600 cash back on Thunderbird, and 5-speed tempos. Low rates and cash back on other Ford cars and trucks, too.
This week on Urban Update, we'll have highlights of the 77th NAACP National Convention. Join us.
The 7 Lively Arts Spotlight is on music, and the Rosenschantz Group will perform a family concert July 30th at Newton North High School Stadium.
Spin Magazine editor Bob Guccione, Sunday at midnight.
The Supreme Court in the bedroom. It's coming up next.
This is Weekend with Dave Finnegan for Saturday, July 19th, 1986.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again here to Weekend Saturday Night. Well, this is the week of counterpoint for the Boston Red Sox. First, the golden boy, Roger Clemens. He becomes not only the winning pitcher of the All-Star game, but its most valuable player. But the pitcher who didn't get to go, the temperamental oil can boy, good Lord, has the man created more controversy here than any baseball player since the infamous Jimmy Pearsall back in the 1950s. But whatever happened in Chelsea, there's something wrong. The Chelsea police got a lot of tall explaining to do about why they are following Oil Can Boyd around and telling him not to inhabit certain sections of the city. Look, if they've got some probable cause of a crime, use it and do it. But for heaven's sakes, don't defame a guy with all kinds of innuendo when he has no legitimate chance to fight back, particularly in the emotional state that he was currently in. Seems to me there's more to come on the Boyd situation, and the Red Sox this time might just have been wrong, and that wrong may cost them the shot at the pennant that they so richly deserve. We'll bring you more on that as it's upcoming. Tonight, we're going to be taking a look at recent Supreme Court hearings and decisions. Is the Supreme Court coming into your bedroom? We have a panel of legal experts who'll take a look at that and give you some shrewd advice about what's coming on. It's a hot one. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
These days, it's not easy for your New England Olds dealer to have a social life because everywhere he looks, there are Olds 88s he's got to sell. For him, it's a nightmare. For you, it's a dream come true because he's offering 5.9 annual percentage rate GMAC financing on any new Olds 88. The length of finance contract is limited. Your New England Olds dealer has 88 zillion Olds 88s he's got to sell.
Please, make them go away.
For over 30 years, the 8th District has been Tip O'Neill's turf. But this year, it's a real horse race. The field is crowded with candidates for Tip's seat in Congress. Will the 8th District race be neck and neck or a flat-out runaway? Our exclusive 7 Inside poll will reveal which candidate may have the inside track to the winner's circle. Join R.D. Saul and political specialist Joe Day for a 7 Inside series. Race for the 8th, Tuesday on the New England News at 6 and 11.
Right from the moment. Here's where it all started. History will blow you away. Right from the arts, the symphony and the ballet. There's a lot to fit in. Right from the legend.
Are you the legend? Nah, he's the legend.
Hey, I'm just marvelous.
Right from the heart.
To be part of Boston's exciting new spirit, just call 1-800-858-0200.
It'll cheer you right up. Boston is right from the start.
Here in this land of plenty, about 10 million people are hungry. Many don't know they're eligible for food stamps. They've lost a job, a farm, or a husband. Food stamps can help. Now one call can get you information to tell you if you qualify for food stamps and how to get them. America has made a place at our table of plenty for you. Call 1-800-453-4000. Mealtimes don't have to be tough times.
Well, Channel 7 has begun its year-long tribute to the 200th anniversary of the United States Constitution. It's called We the People. The Constitution, as you know, lays the groundwork of the individual rights that we enjoy as Americans, and it also lays the plan for the structure of our government. Well, part of that structure is the judiciary, the court system that decides whether laws are constitutional. As the makeup of the Supreme Court changes, so too can the philosophy of the court shift, and some decisions can be altered or even reversed. Recently, in one case regarding a woman's right to abortion, the vote was narrowed to 5 against 4 from the 1973 decision, whose margin was 7-2. This same court upheld a sodomy law in Georgia by another 5-4 vote. Now, these decisions, along with the Presidential Commission's report on pornography, seem to indicate a trend toward government intrusion into the bedroom. And you say, can it be true here in America? Well, it probably can be true, but we ought to check with our patent of crack legal experts who are here with us again this evening. Pat Piscitelli is here with us from Brockton, Tom Troy from the greater Boston area, and the Dean of the Criminal Trial Lawyers here in Massachusetts, Larry O'Donnell, is with us. Before we get into the High Court in Washington, let's talk a minute, if we can, about a conversation on everybody's lips today. Oil Can Boyd and his confrontation with the Chelsea Police Department. Pat, did the Chelsea police do the right thing over there with Oil Can?
Only when I read the papers, David, it seems as though there may have been overreaction. I think that he was in a tense mental state anyway to begin with. He's a hyper kind of guy, and perhaps an overreaction occurred on both their parts. So my answer would be perhaps it should not have happened as it did.
Tom, assault and battery on a police officer. If I assault a police officer in front of other police officers, am I likely not to be brought into custody until 12 to 14 hours later?
No, they made a mistake on that one, and it would appear as though in this legal environment out there, if you want somebody to pick on, let's go over by Oil Can Boyd, give him a kick, arrest him, do something with him, report him to the Red Sox. Whatever you have to do, we get a new kick and post. Name's Oil Can.
You're harassing. Larry?
Well, what happened with the police officers, when they move after Oil Can Boyd, they're looking to become celebrities themselves. When you saw the sergeant in the station on TV and he's sporting the bruise, that looked like a lover's squeeze to me. I hope the public don't think for a minute that he got that from Oil Can. What the Chelsea police should be doing, Chelsea's been burning my entire life, is make one arson pinch. Their conduct was positively flagrant, disgraceful, and under no circumstances can they justify it. And the only reason they were in the position they were in because they resented the success of Oil Can Boyd, and they were working for a nefarious individual. Be very interesting to find out who put them there. And I wouldn't...
Well, who would put the Chelsea police there besides...
The Red Sox, that phony management. I wouldn't for a minute suggest that they wouldn't have the Chelsea police that are for hire. They positively would look to aggravate that situation.
You think the Chelsea police are monitoring the conduct of Oil Can Boyd for the Red Sox?
Yeah, the Chelsea police are a total failure. They are not police. And the fact that they get excited in the city of Chelsea about anything except the whole place burning down and disappearing in the Mystic River is amazing. They contrived this entire situation.
Who believes here that Oil Can Boyd actually punched the police officer? Anybody here believe that?
No, not a chance.
Well, I don't know about that. He might have punched him, but...
Well, wouldn't he have been arrested at the time of the punch?
Well, not if you don't have probable cause to arrest him. You take second thoughts about it, and then you say, well, geez, I whacked him too. Maybe I better do something about it. As far as Oil Can was concerned, it was just another skirmish in the streets with people who pick on him all the time.
All right,
the great thing of the interested witnesses, there's witnesses there, and I hope they never feel intimidated and they tell what truly happened.
All right.
Well, Larry will represent them if they want to come forward.
Only time will tell what's going to happen there. Let's go to cases already decided, since that one can't be decided here tonight. The Supreme Court, people are saying, went overboard on the one hand in upholding the sodomy law in the state of Georgia, and then on the other hand came back with what was apparently a much more liberal decision and protected a woman's individual right to abortion. Is it contradictory, schizophrenic, or in any way a paradox for the Supreme Court to operate in the manner that they did, Thomas?
Well, no, I don't think so. It shows one thing. The makeup of the Supreme Court by president doesn't have anything to do with how they're going to decide the issues. They're all scholarly men, and although we disagree with them most of the time on issues such as this, I don't think that that was the case here. They're not schizophrenic at all. What we're talking about is you have an issue that is paramount to the family routine of life, not only in Massachusetts, but throughout the known world. Of course, there's no absolute right to perform a homosexual act or sodomy.
Do you agree, Pat?
No, that's not the issue, really. And I disagree strongly with the court and what it did in its sodomy decision. Positively, as was said by the dissent, you know, it's really an invasion of privacy. It's really not a question of the fundamental right to commit sodomy in private. That's not the issue. But once you had the Supreme Court majority frame the issue, it was very simple to come up with a conclusion that justified the issue.
Is there a right to homosexual sodomy? Is that a constitutional protected right?
No, they said there was none such, but that's not the issue. The issue is the right of privacy, the right to be an individual, the right to be yourself in private. If you're doing of, whether it be sodomy or any kind of sexual act, does not impinge upon or infringe upon the rights of third parties, you've got a gosh darn right to stay in your home and do what you want.
Extend it any way you want.
Well,
enough's enough.
No. We said that you could read obscene material in your home, and that's not a violation of any, that's not improper. Yet we said you can't buy it. It's illegal to buy it, but if you sneak it into your home, you can sit there and read it. That's legal. Well, why can't you do anything else than sexual in your home privately?
Larry, why don't we have the kids, too? Why don't we do the kids in the house and everything like that?
Yeah, it all goes to the home. Sodomy means different things in different places, whatever state you happen to be in.
Yes.
But the home has a sanctity, and the very state of Georgia and the Supreme Court recognized that in allowing the person to view or read any type of materials in his home. They had the phrase that the poor man may in his cottage sit, the rain may enter, the wind may enter, but the King of England cannot enter. As a matter of fact, sodomy was in the ecclesiastical courts. The opinion shows it. And who Henry VIII brought it into the civil courts. It's not enforceable. The interesting thing about the Georgia case is Lawrence Tribe, the teacher's law at Harvard, he blundered in this case. He represented the petitioner. And he was never sentenced. The petitioner in this case, Tempest in the Teapot, he was never sentenced. The Georgia has never enforced sodomy in 30 or 40 years. The man was never brought to trial. The Attorney General dismissed the case, and he went in for declaratory judgment, and it was as against a motion to dismiss. The public should know he never went to jail. He was never tried.
Yeah.
And the swing vote on the court, Powell, brought that out clearly, and I think for 1 minute, if there was a prosecution, a successful prosecution, Powell would have been on the other side.
So it was a test case, obviously, that the defendant wanted to prosecute, right?
Hardwick wanted to be prosecuted. As a matter of fact, if a different kind of attack went forward, we'd be talking about a different ruling here today. They didn't challenge the first offender for some act of sodomy, them being able to give him 20 years. Now, if they had gone under cruel and unusual punishment, we'd be talking about a different situation here today.
In this case, it is clear that the individual who was accused of performing the act was the protagonist in the drama. Of course, he brought the case to the court, right, Pat?
True, he did. But as Tom said, they didn't raise the issue because the fact was by motion to dismiss. The issues of cruel and unusual punishment were not raised. That is, whether or not a 20-year sentence for a single private consensual act of two homosexuals in their home is punishable by 20 years. That issue was not raised. Equal protection issue wasn't raised as well as to whether or not heterosexuals had never been punished for doing the same thing that these guys have done.
You can't invite people into your home and say that's an extension of privacy. To have them watch you do a sexual act and then say there was a reasonable expectation of privacy. So I disagree with him, and I agree with the Supreme Court. And it's difficult to agree with Berger.
Is it reasonable to draw a distinction between heterosexual conduct, which has a lot to do with society, family, nurturing of children, and all the rest of it, and homosexual conduct, to make it two different bases for opinion? That's what they did.
Absolutely. That actually occurred in this case.
Yes,
They're never going to go forward on heterosexual conduct because it ferments the family and that sort of thing. So it's constitutionally protected.
They said that they conceded in that case that it was unconstitutional to go after the heterosexual engaging of sexual acts of that type. Never tested it in that case, but they said in a footnote that it was unconstitutional.
Yeah, but it's common.
What the court has said that basically is that homosexual conduct, if a state chooses to prohibit certain homosexual conduct, they can do so. If they try to do the same thing into heterosexual conduct, they cannot.
That's what they conceded in that case, and I would bet.
Is that fair?
Yeah, I'd say it's fair. And what
That's a fair representation of the president's state, but there's a change in court. You got Scalia and Rehnquist becoming the chief, a different kind of a vote. You may see a resurgence.
They raised that issue,
in
David. They raised the issue of the Eighth Amendment, too. They said that a homosexual may have proclivities or inability to prevent himself from acting in homosexual fashion, engaging in a sodomy relationship. And if that's the case, that his status as a homosexual is being penalized, and there was a Robinson case by the Supreme Court years ago that said a status as a narcotics addict could not be punished. If you're punishing for a status, that question is never litigated and may well be brought to the fore sometime in the future.
Well, now, wait a minute. I was just going to say, is this irresistible impulse towards a particular activity, and therefore I'm protected in that activity?
The word sodomy gets the pulpits waving, screaming, and it's conduct that goes back thousands of years, and as I said, was in the ecclesiastical court. We give people in this nation freedom of choice, and frequently people make bad choices. The point is, who's going to control it? It's literally the government doesn't have the power to control conduct within a house.
That's the issue.
Let me take a break on this issue, and we will be right back. God bless Henry VIII for starting the whole process. In a minute, we'll be back.
He wasn't a bad guy.
If you're 60 or over,
like me,
the Silver Pages from Southwestern Bell Media helps you shop for savings.
at all these businesses.
Yeah, who gave her a script? that businesses that offer special values for seniors in this area.
And don't forget...
I know, the useful magazine and information section.
Now, let's tell them about...
The Silver Savers Passport Card. It's your passport to savings.
Oh, that's telling them, Bob.
The Silver Pages can make you a Silver Saver, too, so shop it and save. Hi-ho, Silver.
Oh.
Meet a woman whose imagination and talent took her from the field of high fashion, the boardrooms of Bloomingdale's and Revlon, to her own successful advertising agency. But she didn't stop there. Kathy Cash Spellman, just 4 years ago, wrote her first novel, which stayed on the New York Times bestseller list for several months. On Monday's Morning Live at 10:30, we'll meet Kathy Cash Spellman and find out how she's living the charmed life most of us only read about. I'm Susan Sikora, and we'll see you then.
These are important years. Years when you're the center of his world. The years that you're shaping his life. Knowing that cigarette smoking is a major cause of heart disease, would you want him to smoke? The American Heart Association, we're fighting for your life.
I think I'd always taken for granted freedom of speech. Until a couple years ago, I was traveling through China. And it was the first time that I ever became aware of having to be careful of how I expressed myself or stated my opinions. Being an American is just a birthright to be able to say whatever you want to. So I appreciate freedom of speech, especially knowing what it feels like to come close to not having it.
All right, we're back here taking a look at some of the decisions which affect personal conduct. We're looking at the sodomy decision, the abortion decision of the United States Supreme Court. There is a discussion in the sodomy decision by Byron White and a retort from Blackmun coming back at him, talking about whether these laws are based on morality. And if they are based on morality, let's not legislate or even by judicial fiat impose a certain code of conduct on the American public. That's basically it. Pat, that's an age-old argument, but where does it go? I mean, how effective is it to say no morality in our law?
Well, I think that one of them quoted the Oliver Wendell Holmes, who said that it is revolting to think that there's no better reason for a law than that it has existed since the time of Henry IV. And because it was immoral in the times of Henry IV, which is what was used by the majority, in quoting, it's the most heinous crime known to man and so forth, and they related all of the bestiality and so forth that took place since time immemorial. No, you can't do that because the moral majority now becomes a moral minority in years to come. What was the will of many people way back when now becomes a minority view. You cannot legislate morality, and that's exactly what the dissent was saying, and I agree totally with
Well, what
that.
do we do when we say that people can't commit murder? Whose morality is that based on?
Yeah.
Well, there are certain crimes which are called mild per se. They are, there's no question, no one would dispute the fact that murder or rape would be a crime which was immoral.
What about grown men
Incest,
having
child
sex with little
pornography,
boys,
yeah.
for example? It's becoming a,
No
a
question.
major
No
difficulty.
question. No question about that.
Nobody has any question with that?
No, but this is
many of the
consenting-
same people who would argue that homosexual rights ought to be protected also argue that a man-boy relationship is a perfectly normal, quote, kind of activity, or at least something that ought to be constitutionally protected.
Well,
I guess the question is, where do we draw the line here?
Consenting adults is a lie.
Yes.
There's got to be a
All
balance.
the word adults, that's criminal conduct that you just described, but there's people that advocate that. I totally disagree with them, but that's criminal conduct, intergenerational
They do
sex.
advocate it, as you know.
I agree with you, they do. So that remains criminal, I hope.
Is the court afraid of that kind of thing? That's the point I'm trying to draw here. And I'm not trying to hold a flag for either of these positions. It's simply, is the court saying to themselves, and I go back to what Tom said, enough's enough. It's high time for us to draw a line to say, you go over that line, we're going to slap you down. Is inferentially some of that present in the Supreme Court's
Of course
decision?
it is. It's there by virtue of who your president is, too, and what the makeup of the court is. We're going to see another Reagan appointment in Scalia. We're going to see Rehnquist become Chief Justice. We're going to see a shift in the court. You talk about the pendulum swing. The pendulum must swing. It goes back and forth, and that's what it's all about. Who's in power? Who put them in there? The people put the legislature, the Congress, or the Senate, the president. They elect these people, and they elect them on what they want. If that guy is saying...
Are we in danger then of being, becoming a greater police state, though, as a result of it?
Positively. Okay. No, the Fourth Amendment says that the people shall be secure in their homes. That has been infringed upon, has been intruded upon, has been invaded by virtue of the recent decisions, and this sodomy decision is just that. Where is the last refuge of security and privacy in this United States?
They're not
except
saying
in
that
a
at all.
home.
They're not saying that we can invade your home. They got to have a probable cause to go into your house.
Oh, wait, Tom, get a reliable informant who says, I know that A and B are up in their home. He told me every...
They don't need reliable informants anymore. We got Gates versus
Wait.
Illinois, who let you do anything you want to do in this environment.
They're going to be invading the home to look for homos.
The people will protect themselves from that kind of nonsense. Believe me.
You think they will?
Positively.
All right, but where is the court leading us in that direction, Larry? Are they leading us in a direction that might get to right where Pat says it's going to go?
Yes, as a matter of fact, the worst discrimination in the United States is on the United States Supreme Court, because they have the people deceived that only lawyers can be members of the United States Supreme Court. That's horrendous. Former secretaries of state, cabinet men, publishers, labor leaders. It's written in English, the law. They argue it in English. The very justices up there, like Berger, he probably has 5 law clerks. This idea that because someone passes for 3 years, not 365 days, and becomes a lawyer, that they're the only people that can sit on the United States Supreme Court is a fraud. And it's the worst type of discrimination, and all people have to do is look at lawyers and decide, I don't want it to be their exclusive pad. That's where the public should be aiming.
Does it leave us with a public who is openly defiant of the Supreme Court edict? To many people, the edict on the sodomy law in Georgia, take away the legal niceties of it, is foolish on its face, thoroughly unenforceable and nonsensical. So we now have a public who is defiant of the latest edict from the United States Supreme Court.
Fear is a wonderful thing, and that's what most laws are, and it keeps a delicate balance in the people.
Fear?
Fear. Fear of prosecution is sometimes that delicate balance that we need to keep people channeled in the proper environment. Otherwise, they'll go crazy, back to Sodom and Gomorrah or whatever else you want to talk about.
You know what's happening now, David? I think that many of us, many defense lawyers, are now resorting to invoking the Constitution of Massachusetts, the Mass Declaration of Rights. In many states, many defense lawyers are invoking their own constitutions because we see the Supreme Court of the United States going off in this highly moralistic imposing of its moral values, or what they think the moral values should be, upon the citizenry of the entire country.
Right. Are they doing that on abortion? They upheld abortion 5-4, pretty narrow. I would predict that if it had gone the other way, 5-4, there'd be demonstrations in the street today and political catastrophic behavior going on as a result of the removal of that right. We came close to it. Where are they going with that issue?
The issue on the abortion, which a woman has that right, and as far as morality in the law, religions for centuries had a shot at governing people, and they corrupted themselves, and they have a history of a horrible performance. You look in the Mideast, and you look at the various pulpits throughout this country, they're divisive. They're looking to fight and kill each other. They're masters and experts in human torture. I want no part of them in government. I don't want to say their prayer. You pray with your heart and not with your tongue. The proposition is this.
Is there a non-denominational
The court should never have taken that sodomy case.
They shouldn't have heard it.
That's right.
They went out of their way to hear it,
They
didn't
were
they?
talking in the oral argument about AIDS, and that got in there. Government looks pretty good when it eliminates tuberculosis, polio. They do a good job when they engage in public health. It's not for the United States Supreme Court. And as far as abortion is concerned, the women of America are entitled to decide what goes on within their bodies.
Until
and
you
the
see
worst
a barrel full of little babies.
Dave, the worst
And you don't agree,
thing,
Thomas?
I'm pro-life.
You think abortion ought to be outlawed?
There are certain circumstances, but you can't let them have free choice to come and go in everybody's bed and then kill the little
Dave,
babies.
How can a man that doesn't give birth talk about it? It's their body, it's their life, and I personally think these fatherless fathers, and I'm talking about cardinals, should be silent on it.
Larry, have you ever seen a bucket full of babies? It could have been your grandchildren.
If you saw Loretta McLaughlin's column when she covered the AIDS convention in Paris, because of the failure of abortion, the highest rate of death today in the world is babies within the first month, and they're in Ethiopia, and the tragedy, and they're eaten by maggots.
But they may indeed be dying for different reasons.
No,
I think we're getting a little off the point there. Of nutrition.
Of lack
of nutrition.
education.
Well, lack of
birth
nutrition. There are people
methods.
of 28 years of age dying in Ethiopia from the same causes, and I think that it's a different...
the infant mortality rate was documented.
I wish we had time to go into that because it's a new issue, but thank you all. Pat, thanks very much. Pat Piscitelli, Tom Troy, Larry O'Donnell, thanks again. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes to wrap up with you. Please come back.
Direct from one of America's largest factories, it's our final summer clear away at factory prices now at the Gentleman's Warehouse. This is your last chance to save on a huge selection of top quality suits, now factory priced only $59.88. Plus sport coats and blazers, factory priced at a low $35, and thousands of slacks in assorted styles and colors from just $16.88. Quantities are limited, so hurry to our final summer clear away at factory prices right now at the Gentleman's Warehouse.
All right, Mama, you can watch, but no interference. And that's as low as I can go.
I don't know.
Oh, give her a break. Mother, that's my final offer.
I can't.
Why didn't you tell her about all those Subarus on the way, you ninny? More Subarus?
Subaru, the New England solution.
Gee, he gave me a great deal. He's really very nice.
He's not nice. He's easy. Mother.
Sunday, July 27th, following 60 Minutes.
What distinction does the Constitution make?
And how might women's rights be furthered?
Why has the Constitution...
When you ask tough questions,
public school officials are...
you demand straight answers. That's why we followed a group of student reporters to Washington, D.C. to meet Chief Justice Warren Burger. Because sometimes it takes a kid to do a grown-up job. The Chief Justice and the Kids, July 27th, as Channel 7 celebrates the Constitution.
The NAACP has not always been popular, but thank God we've always been right.
Hi, I'm Gary Armstrong in Baltimore, the new headquarters for the NAACP, the nation's oldest civil rights group. This week on Urban Update, we'll have highlights of the 77th NAACP convention held here. Join us.
Well, that's about it for this evening. We'll see you again, I hope, on next Saturday at 7 o'clock, where we take a look at some of the events that have happened during the week, and we'll be back with you at that time. But before we leave tonight, remember that coming up this week on Urban Update, highlights of the 77th Annual NAACP Convention toured a new era. It's from Baltimore, Maryland. It's hosted by Gary Armstrong. You take care of yourself. Stay tuned, and we'll see you next week. That every time the public was waiting to hear the truths from celebrated witnesses like Admiral Poindexter and Colonel North, they were disappointed to hear both of these gentlemen, reluctantly, they say, plead the Fifth Amendment. Well, what is this Fifth Amendment protection anyway, and precisely what happens to you when you do invoke it? And what rights do the American public have to hear the truth, notwithstanding that right? We'll examine that question tonight. Three celebrated attorneys join us when we come back for that discussion and the whole contra affair right after this. Come on back.
Celebrate that dinner's done. Celebrate the sweets have come. With J. Roger Spumante, you'll have a ball. Celebrate with lots of treats. Celebrate with wine that's sweet. With J. Roger Spumante, you can celebrate even nothing at all.
No matter what the occasion, nothing celebrates it like J. Roger Spumante.
Methinks the chocolate could be smoother.
Smoother.
It was a Quaker belief that anything a man made, he should make wholeheartedly.
Perhaps a bit creamier.
Creamier.
For John Cadbury, that belief took the form of an exceptional milk chocolate.
Too bad you have to change.
Change my clothes?
No, you're...
It's 200th anniversary of the United States Constitution with special programming that takes a close look at the fundamental freedoms the document protects. It's called We the People. And the latest event to underscore one of these valuable freedoms is hitting the headlines every day, the Iranian arms deal and the siphoning of funds to aid the Contra forces in Nicaragua. It's the kind of scandal that Newsweek says has a life of its own. Now, President Reagan's credibility may be one of the casualties of this situation, as reflected in recent polls. And now 4 separate investigations have been launched to focus on what happened and who's responsible. One of those investigations is that of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. It's the first congressional hearings to be carried by the network since Watergate. And when Secretary of State George Shultz testified, he shocked the committee when he told of deals made behind President Reagan's back and without his own knowledge. Well, the president's official statement was that he would cooperate with the investigations, and his first gesture was to offer Vice Admiral John Poindexter and Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North to testify as well. But that gesture meant little when both Admiral Poindexter and Colonel North took the Fifth, invoking their rights under the Fifth Amendment not to answer questions when those answers might prove to be self-incriminating. Well, what about that Fifth Amendment? What does it mean to the American society at large, and what indeed will it mean to these congressional hearings? We thought we'd go to some of the folks who would give us some expert answers in those directions. And joining us once again, we have attorney Pat Piscitelli from Brockton, Tom Troy, a Boston attorney here, and the dean of the criminal trial lawyers here in Massachusetts, Larry O'Donnell, is with us once again. Thomas, let's start with you if we can here. An individual goes before a congressional hearing under the glare of the nation's spotlight, really, and he says, I can't answer any questions because it might tend to incriminate me. Everybody says he shouldn't do that because A, he's a person in the military, and B, he's got something to hide. What does it mean to the Fifth Amendment and my ability to use it when I need it?
Well, first off, you have a perfect right to do it. There's a book called The First and the Fifth, and Lawrence O'Donnell added the phrase, the First and the Fifth forever, when he trained me years ago. I say this to you. You have a perfect right to take the Fifth Amendment in Article 12 of the Constitution of Massachusetts in order to protect your innocence. And that's what it's all about. Not that your answer might tend to incriminate you, but in order to protect your innocence. And we'll get into that more, I'm sure.
Well, Larry, what about it? Under what circumstances can I invoke my Fifth Amendment right?
You can invoke your Fifth Amendment right, Dave, anytime you're under compulsion, you've been subpoenaed, and you were in front of government agency, and at that time, it's a personal privilege. You can't invoke it for any reason other than as it affects your person. And the case is established that you're entitled to use it if the information furnished by you would establish a link in a chain that could lead to prosecution. Most people think it's immediately you're incriminated, but that prosecution is onerous. Why do you have that shield? Why do we have it in the United States? Well, we had it in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for 9 years before the United States came into existence in our Declaration of Rights. Against the powerful government, with all their power, an individual is in a tough spot. So they can exercise it in order to give them an opportunity to personally let the government prove them beyond a reasonable doubt. But when I say that, let me say this. What does the government do, and what did it do historically when there wasn't a Fifth Amendment? It tortured people. Considered, the popes endorsed it, the Spanish were experts in human torture, and Iran and the Ayatollah. To this very day, he talks about people that can't be rectified, chop off their head, chop them up, and burn them. But let me say this, in the absence of a shield against the powerful government, it's torture that the government would engage in. And may I just add this, I understand your viewing public say it defies common sense. If a person doesn't have something to hide, what's he taking the Fifth for? Now, the public's entitled to take that position and think like that. But they have to say, why do we want him to mea culpa in public? I know in the so-called Catholic setup, people go into a confessional, it's dark, they're not satisfied, they drove across town to get in front of someone they won't know. If I just tell my people, you don't have to mea culpa in public.
No, but in this instance, Pat, we have a situation where we have two prominent government employees, one an admiral, one a lieutenant colonel. People might hold them to a higher standard because of the office they hold. At what point is the public justified in saying why they should have talked because they owe me the story?
Well, I don't think that's ever the case, David, that they're owed an explanation by anybody. They've got the same constitutional rights and the right to be protected as does every lay person. What bothers me in this case is that that's the impression that might be conveyed to the listening public, the watching public. because of the fact that they are higher ups, if that's the proper
So I
terminology.
can draw a negative inference. If you take the Fifth, I bring you into a public tribunal, I ask you a question, you invoke your Fifth Amendment rights, I draw a negative inference. Now the question is that one of the burdens that I have to carry for having invoked the right?
Oh, sure. There's no question that it is. It's like a person in a criminal case who doesn't testify on his own behalf. The instructions given to the jury that no presumption is to be indulged in or inference to be drawn by the fact that he doesn't testify on his own behalf because he's deemed to be innocent and presumed innocent.
Yeah.
And of course, you wonder whether or not the jury says, gee, I wonder why he's not testifying. Is he guilty of something? The same thing happens here. But they've got these same rights that you or I have, no matter what their position in life.
Is the media being fair, Tom Troy, when they say Lieutenant Colonel North and Admiral Poindexter took the Fifth, when in fact the media itself takes the First when it's attacked? I mean, what distinctions can you draw from
Don't
there?
do as I do as I say. The media wants it their own way all the time. You guys for years have been saying we have a perfect right not to reveal our sources. We have First Amendment claims. But the minute a hero like North, and the president was right on that score. I don't know if he's right on anything else, but he's right on that. North is a hero. You only have to take a look at that fruit salad to determine whether or not he's a real hero. And I tell you, I'm not ready to burn his medals like they did in the Vietnam situation.
All right, if he's a hero based upon past conduct, it doesn't, however, exonerate him from entering into deals which were illegal under the United States law.
He's a small fry. He's a little guy.
But suppose he did. Suppose he did engineer some of these deals. It doesn't exonerate him, does it?
No, it doesn't. Let me just say this. Insofar as the Fifth Amendment, George Washington endorsed it. There's 10 amendments to the Constitution, the first 10 Bill of Rights. Be just as happy about the Fifth as the first because the same fellas wrote them.
Yeah.
They're all just as valuable. I remember when the late Charles Choate of the Boston Herald took it when he was confronted with questions about whether or not there was any picadillo trying to get Channel 5. I've watched all kinds of people take it and find it very comfortably, but you can't criticize it. You can't criticize the public for saying, well, take Poindexter, Admiral Poindexter. Now he's an admiral. Put him aboard an aircraft carrier, and some young recruit, he asks him a question, the kid says to him, Fifth Amendment, he'd throw him overboard.
Yeah, he probably would.
He doesn't look like, he looks like a hard-hearted guy to
like
me.
the FBI torturing people down in Nicaragua a few years ago.
And the pipe threw me off a little bit. But the point is, let's give the public their entitlement. As far as he was concerned, when I looked at him taking the Fifth, I can make a value judgment. I appreciate the Fifth. I've used it. There's an unfavorable inference in a civil case, but the fact that the people can indulge in a value judgment. They call it the White House basement. After listening to Poindexter, I call it the White House cellar. There's 5-watt bulbs down there.
I'm bothered by the fact that during the course of these hearings, that one of the congressmen said that he's never seen an active admiral ever take the Fifth Amendment. You know, that is terrible. Here's a guy who's got a constitutional right to do it, and for many reasons he may be protecting other people. He doesn't want to name other people. They say that you're taking the Fifth to prevent yourself from being incriminated, but many times I've had people who have been totally innocent, whom I say will take the Fifth Amendment when they're testifying before grand juries, for instance, who want to protect others.
And the four of us in one room, Dave. You're an innocent party. You don't know the three of us are conspirators. The FBI saw you come in there. You're part of that conspiracy, that overt act. You take the Fifth Amendment in order to protect your innocence, not because you were
But I think the instance that Pat's raising is a good point to move to, perhaps, and that is, what's the nature of these congressional hearings when people can make side comments about your invocation of a constitutional right?
That's usual.
That's awful.
Yeah.
That's awful.
I mean, judges don't do that.
No, but judges don't have to go out and kiss babies every 2 years or every 4 years.
Which raises the question about
and every one of them are politics.
Is this the proper forum for us, then, to ask the American public to watch the truth unfurl every day?
It's always been the law that Congress can educate themselves, can hold these hearings. Now, when congressmen, which I do not endorse, when they make cracks like he's a Fifth Amendment traitor or something like that, you know, that they're exercising a constitutional right of speech and debate, as much as we may know, and they're exercising...
But they're also turning their back on the United States Constitution. They're sworn to promote and defend.
I'm not defending it. I'm saying why they are permitted to do it, insofar as this is concerned. Usually they see the so-called underworld or scumbags using the Fifth.
Yeah,
What's
Frank
disturbing
Costello.
everybody here is we have the so-called overworld with the aura of respectability, an admiral, But the point is his bones are made of dust, and it's available to him, and he
All
wants
right.
a shield.
Let's take a break at this point, gentlemen. We will be right back. We're going to expand this discussion to take a look at whether the foreign policy led to illegal acts, and if it did, what are the defenses for the administration. We'll be back with it right after this. Both of Boston are here with us. Let's take a look, if we can, and at the acts that might have been committed. If there were illegal acts committed by people in the National Security Council and beyond, how bad is it? What defenses does the administration have in the implementation of its foreign policy? Any special rule that inures to a president and his staff that wouldn't get to guys like you and I? Pat?
Well, I suppose the conduct of foreign policy, the president is supreme, but it would seem to me in this case that there has been at least the impression that, or the appearance that there's been a circumvention of the law by sending arms to Israel, which in turn sent it to Iran, which was not supposed to have been done. What's bothersome in this case is that if, in fact, any improprieties are committed or illegalities committed, Dave, that there are people on trial, for instance, in the U.S. District Court in New York, who are accused of exporting arms to Iran or selling arms to Iran, who should not be even tried because of the fact that if the executive or if the government of the United States is prosecuting them for something which they themselves do covertly, they should be precluded from.
And that was a pretty celebrated case. In fact, when the United States Attorney in New York was announcing that case to the press, he said this is one of the most dangerous acts that ever could have been committed by private citizens because it might tip the balance of the war between Iran and Iraq and endanger the foreign policy of the United States. In fact, they were carrying out the foreign policy of the United States.
Sure.
Tom, you have in times past taken a different point of view. Well, what think you of whether an illegal act was committed and whether or not it ought to be sought out and punished, and if so, how?
Well, I think that any time there's an act committed or omitted in violation of a public law, either forbidding that act to be done or not to be done, then it's a crime. And there's no question in my mind that there was some wrongful conduct here. But I would, if I were representing the President of the United States, I'd say, so what? I mean, what right does Congress have to interfere in foreign policy? And I would have questioned, of course, in a different way. I would have attacked the Boland Amendment in the Supreme Court of the United States and to determine its validity. I mean, after all, he appointed most of them. If he can't get a decision there, he's never going to get one from the Congress because they're basically right now a Democratic Congress and they're all politicking up there. Now they want to kick the president in the pants. They ever watched the late night movie and saw what a hero was?
Well, you've got a problem here, though. You may not like the Boland Amendment and you may not like the fact that the Senate Intelligence Committee has certain oversight powers over covert operations, but in truth, by law, they do. Yeah. Now, if we're going to say by law I can invoke my Fifth Amendment rights, don't we necessarily have to consistently say, and by the way, whatever laws are on the books, I got to obey them?
Yeah. Dave, I'd like to say this. As far as the Contras are concerned, that's the official foreign policy endorsed by Congress of the United States. Jean Fitzpatrick, a brilliant woman that I think speaks very intelligently. The thing here with Lieutenant Colonel North and Poindexter, they're rank amateurs. Rank amateurs for the role that they were picked for. Our government trains the CIA in burglary, safe-breaking, intelligence, phony passports, forgery. They're trained in every type of subversion known to mankind.
The media's been doing that for years.
They've been doing, in fact, you take Fort Holbrook outside of Baltimore where the Army intelligence goes, that's all on the program. Every type of forgery, burglary, wiretapping, and all government agencies.
So what are you saying, that these folks weren't good enough at the deception?
They were not. It should have been with the CIA. Here's what Congress should have done. Rather than this Contra baloney, if you feel that what's happening in Nicaragua is that much of a threat, declare war. Don't be the cat's paw. I'm not saying they should. Dave, well, what are we doing?
No,
Stay out of there entirely. What I'm saying is this, Dave. We shouldn't be dealing with the Contras being led by a former Coca-Cola official. Either they have the courage.
The Pepsi generation.
They either have the courage. Yeah. They either have the courage to declare war, which I wouldn't recommend, but don't do it indirectly by financing.
I'm not a hawk. See the tie?
The next thing is
Marine Corps.
That's my Marine Corps emblem. I'll tell you something.
Congress has legitimate oversight powers, and you shouldn't be sending out a young field officer, a Marine.
Well, then why do we do it?
We do it. I think the crime here is massive stupidity. The entire program wouldn't get off.
They were a clean heart and mind.
In Andrew Square in South Boston, that say these fellas can't carry it out. Suddenly you're putting millions of dollars in their hands. And now let me tell you about Iran. They are Muslims.
30 million.
They're Muslims.
Yeah, we know that. That's
You'll
established.
take Poindexter or not, there's moves in Iran with those Muslims that they've never seen in your life. Here's a country bordered by Russia, bordered by Turkey, bordered by Afghanistan, Pakistan, on the Persian Gulf. And the so-called Mohammed in 1632 starts them going. They laugh at the United States. They saw this coming. They have moves that in 200 years no one in the United States have ever seen.
What you're saying is non-democratic nations have an advantage when it comes to carrying out covert activity. But we're not. We're a democracy, Pat.
The problem is you can't operate that way in a democracy, but it's been done. I mean, we've done things which are obviously distasteful and bad. We've had the Gulf of Tonkin resolution to start a war, really a war, which really should not have ever been.
There was no attack. The Vietnamese had no navy.
That was pretense. That was pretense.
Two senators voted against.
Let me tell you something. I still get a chill up and down my spine when they play the Star Spangled Banner. I think North is a hero, and let's get those people back. Like Larry says, we have to go in and take them.
No. The fact is, Tom, that
I'm not going to let Congress tell me we can't have them back.
If he's a legitimate hero, you're not suggesting that that's a defense against lawbreaking.
I'll tell you what the defense is, okay?
What is it?
The defense is when you have a stupid political Congress that won't give the president the right to devoid our country of any possible attack by the communists, then there's something wrong. Somebody's got to do something, and thank God we have the Reagans of the world to take the first step.
Don Regan?
Not Don Regan.
Okay, you've
I'm not talking about Don Regan.
Don Regan had a civil service job and had to have 15 hearings. He should be cut out just like that.
Oh, I agree with that.
As a matter of fact, if you don't know what's going on in the cellar of your house, which they're referring to gently as a basement, he's through.
Mm-hmm.
The fact is, the inference, any reasonable, warrantable inferences, he knew. So goodbye.
Now, we're talking about who knew? Don Regan.
Don Regan.
Oh, absolutely. Okay,
and
sure.
I wouldn't doubt that the
that's
president...
his job to know.
See,
and it's his job to shield the president from that kind of knowledge, is it not?
They took this innocent fellow by the name of North and said, for honor and country, do this, do that.
All right.
He was...
And he was happy to do it.
He couldn't even speak... But the other thing is, then they so-called fire him. He was a babe in the woods when it goes to the Ayatollah, when it goes up against the Muslims.
I can't adopt that, really. I mean, what you've said before is that you can't defend a person, though he feels that he's doing something in the name of liberty or country and so forth. That's what you're saying about North.
I agree with you entirely. The fact he's a hero doesn't make him immune to criminal conduct.
He's involved in the Libyan affair for us, the Achille Lauro...
He's being used.
You're saying he's miscast.
You're saying
you took a rookie out of the dugout in the middle of the World Series and you put him on the mound. That's what you're saying.
In the Congress.
I'm saying something different.
When they prevent the president from getting our people back.
But at least they have the right to do it. Let me ask this question. If indeed Colonel North and Donald Regan and McFarlane and others are acting as an NSC, isn't their job, really, to carry out risky ventures in foreign policy without drawing the president into it? In short, are they not a shield against what might go wrong and therefore are meant to protect the president? And if that's the case, then who are the heroes here? The individual Don Regan who stays, claiming that he knew nothing of the activities of Poindexter and North? Is that credible in any way, shape, or manner?
The word hero, no, the word hero shouldn't be used. Those Marines that got bombed and died, they're heroes. The kids that got crashed, dead people are heroes that give their lives. But no,
I don't know whether North is a hero or not, but I do know that...
The word is confusing. He is in a role that superior, older, mature people put him in because they felt they could use him. And he's otherwise a totally decent guy.
I agree with that.
Now, we have war colleges. We have all kinds of diplomatic training, and the CIA are experts in every type of
the CIA
crime
was
known to mankind.
Apparently, they couldn't hide it from the Congress and the press especially. Let me tell you something. You have a situation here where if if North and the rest of them are guilty of crimes and you're going to force them into jail because of it, you're never going to get anybody else to do that work. You're never going to have any protection as far as this country is concerned.
Sure
we have kill squads. We've had them for 100 years. They were here under Washington.
What you will do is you will rid them of this particular moment in time, and they will be recreated in another moment in time, because one of the defects in our democracy is we try to carry out covert foreign policy, and it's almost always in violation of the laws of the United States.
And every president did it.
That's right.
Yeah,
I think
what
that's
you
right.
say, Dave, is absolutely true, as Pat so well brought out, the Tonkin Gulf and so forth. All bureaucracies of the government, if you look at the oversight records of hearings in Congress, violate the law. That doesn't make it correct.
I agree with that. I'm saying that's the risk inherent in carrying out the policy.
There's absolutely no...
The policy's wrong.
Here's the hypocrites. Congress endorsed the Contra policy. It didn't have the gumption to go the full route. We shouldn't have policies where we have millionaires that made all their money with government taxpayers' money telling us how to run foreign policy.
On that score, gentlemen, we are out of time, but obviously it's been a very lively discussion. We thank you for that, and we'll be talking to you again in the near future, I'm sure. All right, if you could rest for a minute, I'll be back in about 60 seconds to wrap up with you. Come on back.
Every so often, everyone does...